Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Remain standing for a moment of silence. Thank you. Need to adopt the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask the indulgence of the board to add one item. I don't know where we'd go, I guess it would be under the new business, but to discuss the appeal to the BZA of our zoning administrator's decision at the past zoning BZA meeting. We could add that to the discussion. I guess that would be,
I understand Ms. Summers plans to be here this evening. As you hear, there's a couple items that are related to
could we
zoning
take that
ordinance.
down if we could? I guess that would be S then 4.
So this is regarding the DOT appeal that was heard by the BZA.
Yes.
What is it? That?
S4.
S as in state.
Sam.
Oh, that's tonight.
Yes.
Motion to that.
Well, I placed the agenda in form of a motion with that addition.
I'll second that motion.
And the purpose?
Motion made and seconded.
Discussion.
Second.
I was just wondering, what's the purpose of this discussion?
Well, I think the BZA may have been in error when they did not side with their zoning administrator and support their decision. I thought we should discuss it. Perhaps the board might want to appeal to the circuit court. The board must support its employees. I've heard several members of this body right here say that, make a very same statement, and we need to support and enforce our zoning ordinance.
Mr. Goff, is this something the board could do? Could they appeal on the BZA's decision?
They could, this board could appeal that. You've got standing, you're a party to any appeal anyway, so it involves enforcement of this board's zoning ordinance. So Mr. Frazier's correct. This board could vote to appeal to the circuit court and have circuit court review the BZA's decision. That's possible.
So we have standing.
Yes, sir, you do.
Several counties, I guess cities have done it as well. I'm just familiar with a couple of counties. This board's zoning ordinance.
And of course, the other remedy for the overall situation is to review the ordinance and make sure it's very clear as to what the board intends for those type of zoning requests.
Any other discussion? Motion made and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
No.
Nay. 3-2. Approval of minutes from the February 5th meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the minutes, February 5th.
You want to have another set that was finished, but not before the meeting?
Yes, the minutes for the 26th meeting are in draft form right now. They'll be in the next meeting. Perfect.
Thank you. Okay, I need a motion.
I move that, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second that we approve the minutes.
Motion made and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Public comment.
Mr. Chair, if I might just interject real quickly, I apologize to the public for the screens not being up. We have some network difficulty here that I wasn't able to resolve. So there are hard copies of the agenda in the back, and that's the best I can do for you right now.
Public comment, the period where anyone wishing or caring to speak has the opportunity to do so. When recognized, please state your name and the district you're in. Direct your comments to the board and declare public comment open. Anyone wishing to speak? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Flint Hill. Seated next to one another, it is not necessary for you to speak very loudly in order to be heard among yourselves. But for those of us out here in the general public, in a public meeting, it is not very easy for us to hear what you're saying. May I suggest that the microphones were provided for you at county expense, and they are working only when your proximity of the microphone to your mouth is about a fist away. If I may, once again, ask, please use the microphones so we can hear what you're saying. We can only assume that what you're saying is valuable.
Thank you, Phil.
The mic on the podium does work, just needs to be turned on if you choose to.
Anyone else care to speak? Yes.
Ray Folsom, Hampton. About 1, 2, 3 quarters of the year, I made a comment to the board about water. The issue is water. And I'm beginning to see the evidence that things are starting to heat up. Loudoun County has written in the newspaper that they know they don't have enough water. They're going to have to go out and get water. And we've got some reports from over the coast near the coast, and we find there is more water. So the one thing I would like for you to do is just keep in your mind that we got a water problem coming, and what you're going to do when it gets here. I have no idea right now, but it's going to be interesting. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't get your name.
Reed Folsom.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Page money, Jackson District. You read this? Can you hear me? Yeah. Members of the board, Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to address you today. To be clear, my comments are as a private citizen, not as Executive Director of RCCE. I strongly support the appointment of Mr. Junk to the Planning Commission. He has far more experience and in-depth knowledge of our zoning ordinance than the other two applicants. Without doubt, he will work hard to preserve the Rappahannock County we all love. I disagree with the proposed contract to complete the minutes without putting it out for competitive bids. I agree with the establishment of a Rules Committee as proposed, and I agree with the establishment of the Finance Committee as proposed. I recommend that you adopt an action item list with due dates that the county administrator can update and include with his monthly activities update. This would provide the citizens with a sense of the scope of work facing our county employees. It would also ensure that the many outstanding issues that the Board of Supervisors and Planning Commission have tasked but don't seem to be making progress are not overlooked. Issues such as the brush pile at the Amosville landfill that will be seeing a major influx as a result of the storm, or the necessary procurement actions needed to start work on the courthouse, the sheriff's office, and the other buildings, or the list of issues identified by Ms. Garden's excellent exit report, particularly the human resource issues. I also recommend that the board have the county administrator resource each item and assign a lead county employee. I also would like to comment on last week's budget meeting. I was pleased with the discussion of the long-term financial challenges the county faces and the speed at which Mr. Curry appears to be coming up to speed. Please follow through on long-term financial planning for our county. It is desperately needed. Thank you for your time.
Anyone else care to speak? Declare public comment closed. About our schools. Mrs. Grimmer.
I will use this. Greetings from your friends at Pantherland. We are open for business today, thank goodness. We were on the phone a lot yesterday looking at our bus routes to make sure we could get to our students. And there were a couple that we knew we would have trouble getting buses there. They were notified, the parents and the students, yesterday. And we were able to either do a workaround or they found their own way. And considering we have pretty decent attendance today, it is a state of emergency, so I can check the little box where it takes it out of our ADM count, thank goodness. I'd like to start off the report though with some accolades for some of our students. Senior Virginia Wyatt, who is nominated for the Jefferson Scholarship at UVA, has been selected as a finalist and is moving on to the National Selection Committee. If you're familiar with that scholarship, the Jefferson Scholar receives a full ride for 4 years at UVA. So one of our students has made it to the final run, and they have their selection committee meets this month to determine if she'll move on. Another senior, Cara Heverly, she's been accepted to the Honors College at the University of Vermont with a presidential scholarship of $72,000 over the course of 4 years. So our students are doing really, really well. In the world of sports, basketball season ended. We had Ryan Atkins, who made honorable mention for our boys at the regionals. Olivia Atkins, first team all-region. Carrington Wayland and Sarah East made second team all-region. So very happy with that. Wrestling, we had a very successful season with our senior Johnny Beard earning a second place finish at states. So very, very happy to see that. Spring sports tryouts have concluded and our numbers are looking really good for spring sports. We actually have enough girls coming out for softball to have 3 teams. It's been a long time since we have. We're a very small school. Our numbers are very thin for the number of offerings we have. We offer a lot of different sports for our kiddos, and to have the numbers come out, that's just wonderful. So we're hoping for a positive season. Our CNA class, our Certified Nursing Aid class, has worked very hard. You may have seen some things circulating on social media about raising money to bring Dr. Patch Adams to our area. Patch Adams, I don't know if you've ever seen the Robin Williams movie, famous in the health careers professions to bring happiness to the workplace, and did a lot with changing the bedside manner approach to the medical profession. Well, they have succeeded in raising their goal of $1,000 for our region, and also they were able to partner with agencies and schools to bring him to Lord Fairfax Community College on August 26th to speak to area youth about health careers. So we're very proud of them. This week, in honor of Dr. Seuss's birthday, which was on Friday, we did have a Dr. Seuss family night planned, which of course Wendy Gedden took care of that. But this week we are celebrating with a Dr. Seuss themed Spirit Week. So we have, let's see, today is Crazy Socks Day, so if you see kiddos running around there, you know, it's not because of the power outage they're mismatched, it's because of our Spirit Day. We have Pajama Day tomorrow, so if they're still without power, they can just, you know, stay in their clothes. That wasn't planned because of that, but Wednesday is Wacky Wednesday, Thursday, Green and Pink Day, and then they have a Dress as Your Favorite Character that would have been planned, but they're going to postpone that. The PTO organizes all of this. I talked about the opening the schools this morning. We were very lucky and fortunate that our power was back on Saturday morning. When my team and I went out to the schools to assess damages, they're very minimal compared to what it could have been. We had one set of our bleachers behind where the football field is fly into the fence, about 30 feet down, so we'll have to take care of that. Our electronic sign saw some damage, so I don't know if that's a thing, but we'll see what we can do about that. And then we had a tree coming down near our band shed, so very nearly missed it, maybe scraped a little corner, but that's about all that your school saw as far as damage to that. School board office has a heat out in one area of the building. The other area is fine, so it was apart because of the power outage. When it came back on, it's sort of like a fuse, but we're waiting on that part to come tomorrow. And one other thing I had for you, actually I had to write it on my notes because it came in as I was walking out the door. We've been working with the library about getting fiber run to our schools. We've been working with the library to put out a request for proposals in a 470 format to split the cost to run that fiber in high speed. Chantel right now is the one that's we're in negotiations with at this time. And that would bring up our capability to 500 Mbps, megabytes per second. We're now at 150. And it would actually give us the capability to go to a gig. They also said if they're able to work this deal with the library and the schools that they'll run it to the visitor center complement. So I know that you all are looking at that as a site to work some offices, so that might be something to think about. Budget work is continuous. We're fine-tuning some things right now with the best information we have from the Senate and the House. Both chamber budgets disagreed on their budgets. So right now they're going to conference on March 10th to hopefully reconcile whatever the differences are, and then the governor has a final go at vetoing or amending. However, I am concerned about this budget for your schools because both the House and the Senate did remove the no-loss funding, which was $161,000 in our budget. So that's really disparaging. So they gave back a little bit in enrollment loss funding, which we got last year because of our numbers. But we're still starting out at about $135,000 to $149,000 in the hole before we even get to our needs. So I am concerned. I'm working all that out. I present my budget of need to my board next week and go from there. Do you have any questions for me?
Sharon?
No, you go.
No,
Go ahead,
please.
please.
No.
I know this seems like probably a long time ago after our rainy weekend, but there was a situation with the water at the school last week, and I was wondering if we could get an update on that, please.
Absolutely. What had happened with our water, as I understand it, our water treatment system in our boiler room at the elementary, I don't know if you've ever taken a walk back there, I'd like you to do so, please come. and see, but there's a lot of interworking systems. There's a treatment system, there's a 10,000 gallon holding tank, and these huge blue treatment tanks that run through filters. There was some type of a blockage in one of those filters where a shut-off backwash valve solenoid went bad, and that's what caused it to malfunction. We were able to bypass that and get water running, so that's why we still didn't say drink the water or use it for cooking, just so we could be safe and make sure we had the testing protocol done on it. But it was declared okay for regular use and everything, and that was fixed, and we're all good to go now. Thank you. You're very welcome.
Hey Shannon, this is our first meeting since the awful incident in Parkland, Florida.
Yes, sir.
And I know the schools have done a lot over the last couple of years to harden their facilities. My question is, are counselors available for kids if they come to school and want to talk to talk to a professional?
Yes, absolutely. After the incident happened, we did send home notifications for parents to be able to, how to talk to their students, to their children about violence at the different age-appropriate levels. That came out of the National Association for School Psychologists. We also make counselors available. We also received a grant through Title IV funding that allows us to provide additional counseling for students who may not be identified through regular screening processes for mental health services and things like that. So that's even available. And I know that we're being as supportive as possible. There are heightened anxieties, and students have come to us with varying degrees of concern about different things. But the great thing about your school community is when they see something, they say something. And we perform threat assessments very regularly on anything that even rises to a level of concern, just to be sure. So our team is very prepared to take care of all of that, yes.
Thank you.
Have we gone back and reviewed some of their safety precautions? See if there's anything we need?
Absolutely. So far this year, right from the get-go, we did receive security grant money. We were able to rekey our entire facility, which needed to be done because there were different procedures in place. There was some turnover, and I couldn't exactly tell who had what key. So that was number one to me. I have to secure the building. We took care of that. We added cameras in areas of vulnerability. But more importantly, we did a lot with culture, mental health training, trauma-informed training for our staff and our teachers. And we also underwent probably one of the most intense trainings, active shooter trainings possible. We did computer modules. We had to put in so many hours of that, and then an actual simulation at both schools. It was incredibly intense, but it empowers your teachers to be able to make split-second decisions should an emergency happen. And it's called ALICE. If you have to look it up, ALICE training. Our regular lockdown procedures are, they're just counterintuitive to what teachers and students want to do in that kind of a situation. We've updated our crisis management plans regularly, and we've also, we redo our drills based on that training and what we learned. Even after Parkland, we met to debrief about what went differently in this one compared to last one. And those are the things as educators we never trained for that. We didn't become teachers to, hunker down and get kids out in case there's a lunatic trying to shoot them, So it's not stuff we like to think about, but we have to, and we do regularly. Every week my team needs to go over scenarios and we troubleshoot against our crisis management plan. So we're as prepared as we can be.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next item is finance. Debbie Nick, is Debbie here?
I believe Ms. Nick is here. She's provided for you the same 4 reports that are typically provided in your report packet. The cash balance shows continued positive information over last year, as well as expenses for the month, year-to-date revenue, and then expenses by department. I reviewed the reports. Everything seems to be in order on the department basis for expenses. There are a few lines that are over, including advertising in the Board of Supervisors line, which is for public hearings and whatnot. And I think some of that is based on some coding being done perhaps incorrectly relative to ordinance, public hearings, and zoning and planning commission. So we'll go back and look through some of that. But by and large, we're where we're supposed to be, both on revenue and expense, or better than that.
I guess, Mr. Chairman, maybe the only question I have, and I can't remember which report it was on, but there were some expenses by, I think it was the registrar's office. Each of our members of the Board of Elections had some expenses, which I made me scratch my head a little bit, since it's been a little while since we had them, a few months. But maybe those expenses are just catching up, or maybe it's training. And certainly, I think the registrar's office or the Board of Elections is under budget right now, so not a huge concern, but I just noticed that the 3 individuals had some reimbursements in there. Just wasn't quite sure what that was for.
That may be in the AP that you saw.
Yeah, I skipped ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, hold that question, I guess, until we get there.
Was it reimbursements or the salary?
Might have been. Yeah, could very well have been that as well.
I think they get, I don't know if
Does the chair get more than the other 2?
one of them gets more than the other.
Okay, that's probably what it was. Thank you.
I don't know what kind of way to do that. Mr. Parrish.
It's usually right after the election. They get paid.
Maybe we just didn't put it in until recently.
Okay, accounts payable,
You have accounts payable in your packet. Did not update the, oh, there it is. February 15th mid-month of $11,883.27. Those are for your utility expenses. Those have been paid. You have then the AP for today of $202,529.29. Those are checks are sitting behind me, waiting to go out the door based on affirmative action of the board.
So you need a motion to pay those bills?
Yes, sir.
I'll make a motion to pay those.
I'll second, Mr. Chairman.
motion made and second.
This is for both.
This is for both.
Motion made and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. We got a supplement, $2,000 to the Sperryville Volunteer Fire Department.
Yes, sir. This is the item that's been on your agenda for a number of meetings. As you recall, there was some discussion on whether Sperryville would accept the truck or accept a reimbursement because they had paid the county's credit card many months ago. Following your last meeting, Sperryville made it known that they do not want the truck, and therefore they are requesting a reimbursement. We'll get to it later, but I'll just say that I have titled and registered all 3 trucks in the county's name and submitted the paperwork by our deadline.
We're still in a kind of a, I'm not British, I don't really know what a sticky wicket is, but this board didn't authorize the purchase of that truck. We had an employee that purchased it supposedly for Sperryville Fire. So now they say they don't want it, and we didn't want it to start with, so where does that put the board?
I certainly can't speak to the past. All I know is actions were taken. The truck was purchased by the county. However, that was reimbursed. I don't know. I wasn't here. It's in our custody. We have a holding period of 18 months, and then we can do whatever we want with the truck. Right now, that one truck in question, valued at $2,000, is not working. I'm getting quotes on what it takes to make it work, so that when it is time to surplus it or use it for whatever reason, it'll be more valuable and we'll better be able to recoup our funds.
Well, it's unfortunate that Sperryville didn't want the truck after all, but I suppose we need to give them their $2,000 back. And start working toward clearing this whole thing up.
If the board's of the mind to do that, the way the packet is set up is to appropriate $2,000 from your general fund balance into the contingency fund, 100-4, 01101-8005, followed by a number of zeros. And then we'll appropriate those dollars to the contingency fund and then cut the check from there. I would also ask, if it's okay with the board, that you authorize us to make that payment in the mid-month. That way we'll get it done and out of here.
Then are the trucks still down there in Sperryville, or have they been brought to?
They are. The 6x6, we're in the process of charging batteries on that. And the other, we're going to try to see if we can get a mechanic to fix it on site to save in the towing costs. So far, Sperryville Fire has not asked me to move them, although we intend to. The bucket truck is at our facility now as opposed to the school bus garage.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that for supplemental appropriation from the general fund balance to the BOS contingency line 100-4-01101-8005,000 for the $2,000 for a mid-month expense of the funds in March so that the company can be reimbursed as requested.
I'll second that.
Motion made and second. This is a roll call vote. Mr. Parrish?
Aye.
Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Lozinski?
Aye.
Mr. Frazier?
Abstain.
And I vote aye. All right, the next item is supplement appropriation for the sheriff's department.
Yes, first let me say that I added this to the agenda the day after I posted it. I believe that was on March 1st, which has been Thursday. So interpret that however you would like relative to your procedure according to your ordinance. This is a request from the sheriff to appropriate $9,149.95 from the PATH grant. These dollars have already been received, the check's been deposited, and she would just like those dollars appropriated into the appropriate line for her to spend this money. This is for the, I believe, Project Lifesaver, which is assists the elderly, I think, in tracking. So if the board is of mind, the appropriation would go from the general fund balance, where the dollars are resting right now, to 100-4-03102-3004 in the amount of $9,149.95.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry I missed this. It was brought to my attention and I missed it. It's an addendum item. It should have been added as an addendum item at the beginning of the meeting. So
it's my understanding that you adopted the agenda as presented.
yeah, but we're really adopting the agenda that went out. That's what our rules, chapter 30, call the orders of the day, and anything that goes out after that is an addendum item. Well, it doesn't actually use that word, but we've always said that it had to be added at the meeting.
But to be safe, it would be appropriate to entertain a motion to add this to the agenda at this time.
I don't think so. I'll put that in the form of a motion. I just wished I'd been a little bit sharper at the beginning. I'm sorry.
And so, I just hadn't been involved in that process, and now I have. And it'll be my goal to avoid these whenever possible.
I'll second it.
Is it another roll call vote? No? Just consensus.
I just have to add it, and then the action that we take would have to be unanimous. Which, while we're there, I don't vote against this.
Motion is second, sir.
Motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
Thank you for the clarification.
Mr. Frazier voted with it?
Well, you still have to vote for the action, now we just added it to the agenda.
Right.
But I really don't plan on voting against it.
Perhaps the motion is in order then. Acceptable.
We're on a public meeting, maybe polling. Mr. Chairman, I place this in the form of a motion that we approve the supplemental appropriation of $9,149.95 for the sheriff's office.
You have a motion?
I'll second, Mr. Chairman.
Motion made and second. This is a roll call vote. Mr. Frazier.
Aye.
Mr. Lozinski.
Aye.
Ms. Smith.
Aye.
Terry.
Aye.
And I also.
Thank you.
Let's see. Next item is appointments. We got Board of Building Appeals.
If you recall, this is the item that's been on your agenda for a number of months as well. Did have a conversation with the building official, and I asked him to make sure that people are aware that this vacancy is available for their consideration, as well as to post a sign near where the permits are issued. He did reassure me that he's not from here and doesn't really know people, so it's unlikely he'll have the influence to stack the deck, if you will. So he is just trying to make sure people know about this. He thought that the group maybe hadn't had a need to meet since 2011. It's very rarely used, but when it's needed, it's important. So we have no applicants for you tonight, or today.
All right, next item will be appointment to the Library Board.
There are currently two seats available on the library board. One that expires in December of 2019, and one that expires in December of 2022. We've done a little bit of research on this, and going back to your local code, which defines the terms, that they do expire on December 31 and staggered years. And state code speaks to filling vacancies. So worked with Mr. Schaefer, and we believe we have straight those terms. So you have one that expires in December of 2019 and one December of 2022. You have 6 applicants that have provided information to you. I've placed in the packet only their cover sheet for their application and provided via email the more detailed information. Some of that detailed information may be compromising from an identity theft perspective. People are having their full resume floating around the world. So these are available to appointments needed.
It appears that there's no one from the Piedmont District on there currently.
That is what we just reviewed. That is
I'm sorry, Mr. Curry, the two that resigned whose terms, I guess Mr. Brown is no longer on the board. Who was the other member on the list here that?
There are 9 seats, so I'm not.
What was the date of the expiration of the term, I guess? Maybe I can figure it out that way.
2022 and 2019, however, they may not align with the list you're looking at.
2022, yeah, I don't see anybody on here, 2022.
Now, this is another that highlighted the fact that we need to do a better job with our appointment tracking, and we certainly aim to do that.
Well, I'm going to jump into this, and I know we have 6 very good applications here. And I'd just like to make one recommendation. Mr. Brown was from the Hampton District, and we have Ms. Nick, who has submitted a letter of interest, and I believe that she may serve in capacity as treasurer of the library board. I guess that is up to the library board. But she is a resident of the Hampton District, so that would be That would be one going off, one coming on from Hampton. And as we all are familiar with working with Ms. Nick, she's got stellar financial capability, which I think, given that the library board is getting $1 million grant, is probably a pretty good time to have somebody like that on the board. If you're interested in taking nominations one at a time, I would put her name forward as a nominee to, I guess, fill that term that expires in 19, which is when Mr. Brown was serving.
We'll have a nomination.
Yeah, I think that should, yeah, because they got all this grant money, they're going to be spending money and keeping track of money. I think Ms. Nick does a pretty good job of that. So I'll second her nomination.
Any other nomination?
Well, should we do one at a time?
Well, good.
I mean, I actually would like to nominate Miss Victoria Fortuna. She's an attorney, and that would be a big asset to the board, or retired attorney. And anybody can use attorney's advice these days. So I was just going to throw that out there. We can do one at a time, if you like, or
We didn't have any from Piedmont.
anybody.
That is encouraging that you had 6 applications, so that's good.
Yeah, normally we don't do that here.
Well, we'll have to name the Board of Appeals Library for a short period of time.
Yeah, they must have increased their pay or something.
Well, in that case, Mr. Parrish, we're losing an attorney, we'd be getting one back, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
Well, if Mr. Brown's going off, he is an attorney.
Okay.
Is that a form of a nomination?
Yes, I'd like to put that in form of nomination.
I'll go ahead and second that.
Thank you.
Okay, we have 2 names. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. We have 2 more appointments. Congratulations, I guess, to those.
And your next item is the appointment of the member to fill the seat on the Planning Commission that is vacant due to the resignation of Mr. Settle. We discussed before this seat runs through June 5, 2018, at which time a new appointment will need to be made for the same person to have a new appointment. There are 3 candidate applications on the board, and just as I noted before, the cover page is in the agenda packet, and the more detailed information was sent to the board.
I was very happy to see 3 applicants for this position. In looking through them, there's one individual in particular, Mr. Junk, who served 12 years previously on the Planning Commission, including 3 as the chairman. And I think he really has the experience to lead this group successfully through the final stages of the comprehensive plan revisions. So I would like to nominate Tom Junk for that open seat on the Planning Commission.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman. I move the nominations be closed.
I'll second that.
All right, we have nomination made, second, yes?
Discussion, Mr. Chairman. By the motion of the nominations be closed, what exactly is being suggested here?
Well, in this case, we'll have to vote on the applicant first before we can appoint another. If they're in favor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other comments? All those in favor of Mr. Junk say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
On a point of order, Mr. Chairman,
Pardon?
I don't understand, the supervisor from Piedmont District made a recommendation, and it's been this board's policy forever to honor such a recommendation. Not everyone sitting here has already used that same prerogative. Every last one of us, you just recently did. And we had an individual that's already, had the training, he's a certified planning commissioner, and served this county for at least 12 years, I think it was already said. I don't understand it. This is a first time, and my understanding that this is just happening.
Well, sometimes, I guess, standards aren't always kept.
Is there a reason why we would not appoint somebody that has experience?
Well, then I guess there's a lot more things you can take besides experience.
Speaking of riddles, Mr. Chairman, I don't.
I'm just
understand.
saying, there's probably other reasons, Mr. Frazier.
I'm just at a loss with only 6 months to fulfill his term. I don't know who you could possibly nominate that would step in and be able to accomplish more than Mr. Junk. I mean, he would be able to hit the ground running. He requires no bringing up to speed. He requires no education. He has a dozen years in and was ahead of the Sperryville Gateway Committee as well. So I'm just at a loss as to what your expectations would be for a planning commissioner if Mr. Junk is not acceptable.
Well, Mr. Chairman, in the spirit of an experienced individual who can hit the ground running, I'll put Mr. Bennick's name forward as planning commission representative for this board from the Piedmont District.
So we have a motion on the floor to close the nomination.
We voted.
There were two motions.
Yeah. So I think you had a motion for a person, and a motion second to close nominations. I don't think you need to act on that before you entertain any other motion.
Yeah, there was a motion by Mr. Frazier, seconded by Ms. Smith, to close further nominations, and the board would have to take action on that, I think, before moving forward logically.
Don't need a motion.
Need a motion.
Open the nomination.
Well, I think you need to take action on the motion that's been seconded to close nominations.
So the motion to open,
I think you need to vote to see how the request to close nomination goes, but given that you already voted on the candidate, I'm not sure how is that.
That kind of feels it.
Well, that was my question, Mr. Chairman, as to what we were voting on with respect to closing the nomination. I mean, if it was specifically for that vote in which we voted nay, 3-2, then I've been under the assumption that you'll then open the floor up for other nominations, which is what I was doing. So I didn't realize that there was another. I don't know if there was a need for another vote to separate vote to close nominations.
Yeah, I'll defer to your parliamentarian.
yeah.
Well, there was two motions made, as I understood it. One was the nomination for Mr. Junk, which was made by Ms. Smith, seconded by Mr. Frazier, according to my note. Then Mr. Frazier made a second motion, which was to close the nominations, and that was seconded by Ms. Smith. So I think since there was a motion and a second, it needs action. Please vote.
So which motion did we vote on, Mr. Goff?
I understood you all voted on the motion for Mr. Junk.
So I believe we need to have the board tell you whether they would like to close nominations. I imagine they do not.
Oh, so, okay, I see what you're saying. So all those, we have a motion on the board to close nominations. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, nay?
Nay.
Nay. Now where are we?
So is that 5? Is that 5-0-5?
I'm going to abstain on that one. Not motion, but I'll abstain.
I mean, if then, I believe the nomination should be closed and we should table this until next month.
So I take it that it's a 1-4-1, 1-3-1. Correct? Okay, motion fails.
And then after that, Mr. Lozinski had made a motion for the nomination of Mr. Bennett for that seat, but there hasn't been a second. And I believe that Mr. Lozinski may have still been talking about his nomination. Is that correct, Mr. Lozinski?
Yeah, if I need to state that again, Mr. Chairman, I'll put Mr. Bennett's name forward as a nomination.
I'll go ahead and second that. I think Mr. Bennett knows groundwork as well as anybody. He's just been supervisor for 8 years, and he knows the territory, the terrain. He knows what's up to speed with the county's doing. And so I'll second that.
Discussion. I wish that this had not come to this public disagreement here, but frankly, Mr. Bennett was not returned to office by the voters of that district, and it's precisely because a lot of people believe he did not get involved in the process. And as a matter of fact, 2 different times at this table, he said that he read it, but he didn't understand the zoning ordinance. It's actually mind-boggling that you gentlemen would do this. I've sat here for 22 years and never seen it done. And each one of you have enjoyed the prerogative of bringing forth the name of an individual to represent the district that you were elected to, and yet you don't honor the same favor to our newest board member. And you have nothing in your defense but to nominate somebody with no experience.
I think there's more to it than that, Mr. President.
Well, you're not stating what it is, Mr. Chairman. I think the public deserves to know what you're thinking about. If you have some other alternative, another reason.
I'm just very disappointed. I thought this was a reflection on someone who could do the job. I didn't realize I was walking into a popularity contest. I really feel that's what this has evolved into.
Well, Ms. Smith, I doubt this is going to give you any solace, and I think board members are aware of this, but my recommendation for the Planning Commission, I wanted to nominate somebody differently than the person that was ultimately put forward and approved. So to say that this has never really happened before, it's true, and that it hasn't happened in the vote here, but I think I'm on record, and I think our fellow board members know that there is a history there with new board members of not getting their first choice on the Planning Commission.
That gives me no solace, and I would continue to fight for my nomination.
I know who I put forth, Mr. Frazier. I'm very familiar with that.
Well, how can you say that you didn't get what you wanted?
Well, I'm just trying to put it all out there so that the public knows and the board understands that it isn't necessarily always the case when
So the
Planning Commission
The
doesn't.
decision, who you nominated, that decision was made outside of this board meeting, just like this decision was made outside the board meeting?
No, I had somebody different in mind, and the gentleman on the Planning Commission is aware of that because I called him and instructed him such. Between the time that we had that conversation and I made a nomination for his appointment, I changed my mind and put his nomination forward.
But then you nominated the person that you wanted to.
Well, technically, yes, you could probably make that argument.
But that's not what's happening now. Gentlemen, I think that this is a very, very serious line that we're crossing here, because it could be perceived as this board, the majority of this board, depriving the people of Piedmont District of representation.
Well, Mr. Chairman, we haven't taken a vote yet.
That's correct.
Which we did take a vote, we took a vote, and this board rejected by a majority vote the nominee put forward by the elected representative of that district. You've already done that.
True.
Then why did you say otherwise?
Because there's a motion and a second for another nominee, and we have not taken that vote yet. That was my reference.
But you, outside of that district, are making that motion. You're not elected to represent that district. Someone else is.
Show me in the code where somebody...
It doesn't. This board has always functioned like that, and this is a grave concern for me.
I might be new to this board, but I'm not new to these meetings. I have never seen anything like this at any of the meetings I've attended before.
And this is, at best, a temporary appointment, because it'll have to be done again when this term is complete, Mr. Sill's original term.
That is noted.
I mean, if it's a priority for this board to have someone on the planning commission that can expedite and see us through the final stages of the comprehensive plan, I don't know what more you could want of a candidate than Mr. Junk brings to the table. I don't see the need for any further nominations. And I would move that we table this until next month.
We already have a motion on the table.
No, I'll second that. That's,
No, I think we have a motion.
motion to table takes precedent.
We have a motion and a second, and we've had discussion. I call a question.
A motion to table takes precedent. That's a privileged motion. Under any other board, any other county,
Defer to our department.
Encyclopedia.
Oh, okay, so you've got a motion to table that's been seconded. This board traditionally, since there is a motion to table made by Ms. Smith, should take that up, decide whether you're going to table the issue of the other nomination that was already made, but you still have to take them in series.
In
Now,
sequence.
in sequence. But it would logically, if there's a motion to table, which I'm assuming our motion is to table the nomination of Mr. Bennett.
Correct.
Okay. So the motion to table would take a preference. Now, you should vote on whether to table the motion of Mr. Bennett. If that fails, then you could move on to act on the motion for Mr. Bennett. If it succeeds, then it would be tabled until the next regular board meeting.
So the first vote is on tabling the motion. For the nomination.
The motion made by Ms. Smith, seconded by Mr. Frazier, would be the one logically you'd have to take up, because the motion to table is going to take a preference. Now, that only happens once, though. So if that motion fails, then the board can take up the nomination of Mr. Bennett.
Correct. You ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed, nay.
Nay.
Nay. 3-2.
2, 3.
Whichever.
So now I believe you have a motion on the table.
For Mr. Bennett, yes. Any more discussion? second. All those in favor say aye for Mr. Bennett.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Motion passed.
Is it going to be this board's determination going forward that we're going to behave like this? I don't understand what happened here. Who is actually calling the shots? Who does this board work for? You won't fess up and say what it is that you have against the nominee. You're hanging it out there as if the gentleman has done something wrong. You won't state what it is. You say there's other things. That is a statement against his character, but yet you won't qualify it.
Well, I don't think it's a statement against anyone's character, it's just that all votes are, I guess you're saying, made with honest intent.
I didn't see it.
If I thought he was a better candidate, I would have voted that way.
He has experience. None of the others that put forth their names had any experience or knowledge. I mean, you know, the list is long: knowledge, understanding, experience.
So we automatically give a application to someone because of experience? Well, still,
Well, I think that the things that are facing this county right now, the comprehensive plan is so far out of date that it's a laughing stock. The fact that well, now the planning commission is going to be one of a disruptive body too. We've had that on the other boards, but now we're going to make the planning commission disruptive. So I don't know what the goal is here. I really don't understand it. But we have never had a situation in at least 25 years where a board member brought forth a nomination to represent their district and it was not approved. And yet y'all allude to something else that may be going on, but you won't say what it is. That's cowardly. You have deprived the people of Piedmont District of fair representation. The people of Piedmont District spoke last November and they elected somebody else, which is their prerogative.
that was for a different position, Mr. Fraser.
I'm sorry?
That was for a different position.
But the elected supervisor, based on the knowledge and the work experience and ethic they will bring to the office, and that includes nominate people to be appointed to boards and commissions.
Mr. Chairman, the board has spoken and taken action within its power.
Yes, it
There
has.
is no reason for further debate on this. We can move on with the agenda.
I'm just putting it up there on the table so that the people understand that there is more going on here than y'all will admit to.
I mean, I would understand it if in some way the application was deficient or defective, or there was information on it that was called into question. But Mr. Junk was clearly the most qualified candidate and was willing to serve out the remaining 6-month term at this critical time. So I really don't understand why this board has reversed its history of supporting the nominee of the district's elected official.
Would you like to answer that without Mr. Parrish interjecting? Because I don't understand it.
I don't understand it either.
There's a certain industry
Well,
that seems to
you
control
made a
what's going
comment
on.
about a popularity contest, well, I just happen to like Mr. Bennett better. That's as simple as that.
I mean, that's what it is. It's a popularity contest.
I worked with him for the last 8 years, and I thought he was a fine gentleman and someone that studies the subject.
Mr. Chairman, he did not study the subjects. I wish we didn't have to have this conversation in public.
I worked very hard to run a positive campaign and to run a positive transition and to be a positive force on this board. It pained me to vote against Mr. Bennett. Pained me. But he is not the nominee I put forward. And I would not have ever wanted to do that to him. And I just would like an answer why my nomination wasn't carried through.
I made my comments.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Can we move on, gentlemen?
I'll call you.
business. County Building Committee update.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the committee met, we had a quorum, and we discussed several things that were, I guess, pending or had kind of been left hanging since the meeting before. We're still waiting for weather to break so that the bricklayers can get on with the demolition and reconstruction of the ramp to the courthouse and the steps at the clerk's office. Those contracts have already been let, though I don't know, honestly don't know now what the, if they had, you know, provision in there for how long they were actually good forward.
It's been awarded, so it's now in the hands of the contractor.
I know, but I don't know if the price is still good. I don't know what the provision was there for holding the price. So we may wind up having to revisit it, I don't know. But that's what we're waiting for, is better weather. We discussed the funds at the Visitor Center, new administration office. I think the funds are actually working over there, but I don't know if we were testing them that day. They're working.
They're partially working.
Partially working. We discussed the total sign package for the administration office and visitor center and some additional signage for the building and zoning over here, because we don't have any way to tell people that zoning is actually across the street now after 8 months. People still walk in the wrong office. Furnishings, we discussed furnishings. I think most of that has been acquired. There may be a few other additional items, I think a computer or two. So otherwise, I think everything's on track to move over there. Just provided we get a couple of these last little details. I think Lauren was supposed to check on some moving companies or some of the logistics of the move itself. I'm sure this isn't everything, but the committee supports hiring a space consultant to actually take a look at the use and occupancy of the various county-owned buildings and make recommendations to this body so that we can utilize the space that we have properly. I think we're going to do like an RFP at this board, would be in favor of doing that. A firm that can make recommendations for proper or better use of our actual existing space. That's kind of a pretty good breakdown of what we did. There's, I guess, a few other odds and ends that we discussed, but that's pretty much it.
I think we talked about maybe getting bids for the sheriff's department roof.
Right, I think we're in the process of doing that.
That is posted right now.
Okay, and then I think, Mr. Curry, you also posted an ad for Mr. Jenkins' assistant in that position.
They're moving towards interviews on that.
We talked about the need, in addition to signage in front of the administration office and the visitor center. I think we also talked about signage back behind these buildings and maybe the sheriff's office as well. Other than that, I think Mr. Frazier did a pretty comprehensive review, other than our next meeting date is April 16th.
Any questions?
Emancipation.
Our site location? Mr. Craig?
Well, actually, Mr. Curry's taken the initiative on this. No one has contacted the tower site committee.
So I've been in contact with tower vendors to try to understand how we can work together to get something lined up for our western tower. I understand previously there was efforts by the tower site location task force to try to find a couple sites. I'm at a stopping point as far as any work I can do with the consultant, not being empowered to negotiate further on the behalf of the county. So I need to know where we want to go from here, whether it needs to be a task force meeting, and that group be empowered to make some decisions or how you want to move forward. I've shared with you some of the details through my reports to you, but they're all preliminary and negotiating at this point, so I don't really want to tell the world what our negotiating stance is.
Yeah, I think we should get a task force committee together, have a meeting.
And so I think I understand it to be Mr. Frazier and Ms. Smith make up the task force, and so I just need to know date, time, and place, and we'll get it advertised, and we can meet, I guess, 3 days after that.
I think we can give you that date by the end of this meeting today.
I agree.
Okay, broadband?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, two things on Broadband Committee. First of all, we're still awaiting input from the CIT with respect to the information that the committee provided them. They are at the point here where we put together an RFP. They sent a series of questions to the county administrator and myself just before this meeting, information that they need in order to complete the document. And I think Mr. Curry and I, and perhaps the committee, will get together and look at those and come back to the board, with some recommended, we'll copy the board on the responses. It's more factual information they're seeking than anything else. The other item, and I think the board members had this attached to their board docs earlier today or over the weekend. And Mr. Irwin has alluded to this actually in some of his public comments, but there's a bill, wireless broadband infrastructure bill, House Bill 1258 and Senate Bill 405, which have they've passed, and Fauquier County has drafted a letter in opposition to the governor to propose that these infrastructure bills be put a reenactment clause on them so that they can be considered again during next year's General Assembly. For three reasons. These bills oppose the preservation of local government zoning authority and take rights away from the locality when it comes to towers and specifically with towers. Sweeping public policy changes in advance of when necessary, and cherry-picking customers and business growth by the larger providers at the expense of rural and underserved Virginia. And my understanding is that Verizon is one of the chief proponents of this legislation. This is why the people have got this thing, been successful in getting this thing through both the House and the Senate. So I do not know if board members have had a chance to look at Faulkner's letter. Given that these bills are going to be showing up soon on the governor's desk, we probably need to act sooner rather than later if this board is going to send a similar letter to the governor asking that he push this bill to 2019. Mr. Curry, I don't know if you have any other observations on this.
In general, it's understood to be a 5G play in the more dense areas where utilities can place infrastructure within the right-of-way on existing poles or new poles that could be up to 50 feet high, and there's some restrictions relative to how tall the nearest poles are without any local zoning. And so that's very concerning with how that extends over time, and there are some, that includes without being able to do a special exception, which is what you do right now for tower infrastructure. I wasn't sure if the letter that I had received from Fauquier was finalized and signed, so I didn't put it in the board packet, but I did email it to you. I did include in the board packet a copy of HB 1258 as it stands right now. So perhaps if the board is of a mind to want to keep zoning and permitting over towers within the right-of-way, you can empower the chair to write a letter similar to what Fauquier wrote. That way, we could get that prepared along the same lines and then provide it to him for a signature.
So, Mr. Chairman, I guess I'll put that in the form of a motion that we take the language here from Fauquier's letter and craft it for Rappahannock for your signature, sent to the governor opposing these bills, HB 1258 and SB 405, that he not sign them. And I have this if any board members did get a chance to look at it in advance.
If they've already been approved by both houses, then it's almost a done deal, so we need to get it in there immediately.
Your only option is something to the governor at this point.
Depends on how much money they've donated.
True.
They're all susceptible to that.
So
There's
we're not
no
sending a letter,
consensus?
we need to vote on this.
Mr. Blazinski moved to authorize Mr. Welch to sign such a letter.
Okay.
Should you kind of be clear about what the letter's going to say?
To parallel the Fauquier letter, is that what you?
That's my motion.
Because the enactment clause on, that would have to be approved by the legislature, I guess, during the veto session or something, but.
Well, I'm happy to just read the opening paragraph, and then it goes on to three principles. So I write respectfully to communicate the County of Rappahannock's opposition to the proposed wireless broadband infrastructure bills, HB 1258 Kilgore and Senate Bill 405 McDougal, and ask that, should these bills reach your desk, you please place a reenactment clause on them so that they may be considered again during the 2019 General Assembly. Our opposition to these bills rests on three principles that the Commonwealth holds dear. And I'll just read them. Preservation of local government with zoning authority, setting sweeping public policy changes in advance of when necessary, and cherry-picking customers and business growth at the expense of rural and underserved Virginia. As your administration sets a vision for the Commonwealth that creates affordable broadband and seeks to overcome the digital divide for unserved and underserved families and small businesses, I urge you to please not remove local government authority. A reenactment clause for consideration in the 2019 General Assembly would be a reasonable and a prudent compromise.
You have a second?
I'll second it.
Discussion? So we're sending this because we want to preserve local influence in zoning decisions
Yes, sir.
and the prerogatives of the local elected board members.
And their planning commissions, yes, sir.
So we really believe that.
I know where you're going.
Well, I'm just asking a question.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
You believe in local elected officials being able to make decisions that affect your district?
I know where you're going with this, Mr. Fraser. That was the last agenda item. I'm not going back there. I'm not following this trap.
All right, that's just a question. I mean, you can answer yes or no.
I have a motion and a second, Mr. Chairman.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carried. Rules Committee update.
Mr. Chairman, I guess that falls on my shoulders. I was supposed to get with you in the last several weeks and trying to come up with a date that would work for both of us so that we could actually get a meeting scheduled and noticed properly. And I've not been able to do that. It's my fault.
Well, we had a bad weekend.
Well, I had a couple of them. So I think that it's possible that we can have that date set before the end of this meeting.
Yeah, so just best practice obviously is to give the public as much time as you can so they can be involved if they want, but 3 days is your critical mark.
Just as a general observation, all these committees that we're forming, and it keeps adding to the bureaucracy. They have to be noticed, be advertised, and it just seems like it's getting more and more cumbersome. And I'm wondering if this is the right path for us. It just seems like it's slowing us down and not speeding us up.
Well, we could do it the other method where we make decisions outside of the public and come here and we don't have a 3-2 vote. We could do it that way.
Well, I was thinking more in terms of delegating the authority for these decisions with our subsequent approval to the county administrator.
Why would you want to delegate the rules that this board has to operate by to an employee of the board?
Saying, it seems to me that it could be more efficient. That's just an observation. We've got several committees going on here.
Well, we've been getting a lot of work done over the last 6 or 8 months because for the longest time this board didn't have any idea what was going on. So I think we've made progress.
Okay.
But there's some growing pains, and the notice requirements are required, yes. I think it'd be better to err on the side of more openness rather than less openness.
Yeah, I got no problem with openness. I'd like to see, it just striking me as becoming a little bit inefficient with all these committees, all these notices, all these advertisements, all these minutes, extra minutes. And
Well, these meetings, these committee meetings don't have minutes.
minutes, okay. But it's just an observation.
Well, if I remember the discussion from a month or two ago, this was about trying to fix our agenda policy, which again, we sort of had a conversation about today with the addendums and noticing when we're going to have meetings and what can go on the agenda and what can't. And then I believe our interim county administrator presented a solution or a recommendation.
A recommendation.
For
difficult to work with.
Yeah, for the board to take up in consideration, and then it was pushed into the rules committee. And so, the rules committee hasn't met in the last 30 days, so here we are again with no more progress on this. I'm not necessarily opposed to the rules committee per se, but when it comes to this particular item on chapter 30 in our agenda policy, we've already got a pretty good start on this.
No, I beg to differ.
Well,
It's a very complicated recommendation she made.
Well, and we were heading toward a public hearing on it, so it's not like anybody was going to try to roll.
We wasn't heading toward the public hearing.
I don't recall that either.
I thought there was a resolution that we were going to have a
No,
public
it's just a
hearing on that.
recommendation she made, but it was very complicated, but
I think of that, her proposal is a very preliminary step and a launching point for discussion. I certainly didn't consider it a finished form.
The problem is, we didn't have any problems until Ms. Gardner got here and misunderstood it to start with, and that's when it all went downhill with it.
Well, I know Mr. Curry is willing to, or has offered to in the past, make some amendments to it, to shape it a little bit more, as it probably needs to be shaped, and then bring it back to the board. I mean, I have a draft resolution, I think, from one of our last meetings that talked about whereas the board finds it necessary to amend chapter 30 meetings of the code, and that we advertise a public hearing. This was in January. We decided to table it at that time, and then in February we came up with
the thing is, Ms. Gardner wrote up something without instruction from this board. Maybe I think you fessed up and said that you had instructed her to write something, and at the same time as she was doing something that this board had not instructed her to do, things were not being done that we had instructed her to do. So I think we need to get away from that. Mr. Welch and I can handle this. It's a very simple thing. It's a very simple thing because it never got misunderstood until Ms. Gardner got here and misunderstood it. We worked for 25 years with it.
Well, it's caused great confusion. I mean,
Not until the last 8 months.
well, whether it's last 8 weeks or last 8 months, it's caused confusion about what, the term addendum, I don't even think appears in our code. Yeah.
An addendum is just something that you've had.
Then we got in a big discussion about what constitutes the orders of the day. and we were spending the first 15 or 20 minutes trying to figure out what our
We're doing
agenda
it
was.
again. Have you read chapter?
We are doing it again.
Have you read it? If you read it, then it's pretty self-explanatory. When the agenda goes out, whether Mr. Curry sends it out on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, he's got to send it out at least by Wednesday. That is considered the orders of the day. Anything that's sent out, see, that's because you won't read it.
No, I remember Mr. Goff
That's because-
interjected and had.
They said that because that one thing went
different
out, she sent something out like on Monday or Friday the week before, and then she sent something out in 3 days. So the argument was whether that 3 days, because it was an added item, but see, you're making more out of it than it is. It's very simple. If you send something out, that's the agenda that the public gets first. Anything after that would be the addendum. And we can actually put that word in there so that it doesn't scare anybody. An addendum is something that you add, it just, the word is not in there. But we never had any problems until Miss Gordon came and didn't understand it. And then she tried to make it even more complicated.
I guess my only
Excuse
point,
me, can we continue?
I thought that's what we're doing.
Well, you're criticizing someone that's not here.
I criticized her when she was here.
That's probably right.
So, I mean, don't accuse me of doing something that I haven't done. I don't care if somebody's here, if somebody's not here. If the job wasn't done properly, it wasn't done properly.
if I could just have 15 seconds, all I'm saying, without interruption, all I'm saying is that this was identified as an issue. There was a recommendation put forward to handle it or to fix it for the board. We tabled it, and we decided to stand up a rules committee to consider it. That committee, which was formed last month, it hasn't met, and you know, we're still here with this issue no further along than it was a few months
We'll bring
ago.
a recommendation to you before the next month.
Okay.
Okay, update on action items. Mr. Kerr.
This related to the vehicles from General Services. I was tipped my hand earlier, and so I've taken all the actions that I told you I would take that were necessary. The vehicles are registered, titled in the county's name, and we're moving forward with gathering estimates to fix the 4x4 truck with the desire to fix it on site if possible to keep the cost down. We'll then have them in use. I did note to you independently that the 6x6 has been registered for some time, I think dating back to June of 2017, and I listed that as the in-service date because that's when it was registered. So that 18-month clock has been ticking for a while, and we'll be able to make some decisions on that when it expires. No action needed.
Next item. Casting Fire Department.
This item's been on your agenda for a while now. I've received verbal approval from DGS to allow Castleton to use our plow. They told me they would send me something in writing. I've asked for it a couple times. I've not received anything in writing. So the best I can do is continue to ask. In the meantime, the 18 months is ticking along because it came along with, I believe, the 6x6. My perspective is that, based on the verbal, if Castleton wants to use our plow, we'll stencil on the back of it, County of Rappahannock property, and they can push our plow around in their truck all they want. It's our plow. If the feds want to come see where our plow is, well, let them know.
I mean, if you set the truck up for that plow, you should be able to use it or one very similar to it in case this thing falls through, right?
The answer is yes.
Yeah. At most, it might be.
It's a cost.
I'm sorry?
It's an added cost. If you have one similar, which doesn't hook up exactly.
Right, it would be a simple modification, but it shouldn't be that difficult.
Right.
Once you've got the truck set up to operate.
I'm grateful that we did receive what we have received in writing from DGS with the extension to March 1st. So I will continue to talk to them about this item, though I feel like we're ahead of the game for what we've already received. And willing to table what we've got, if that's all we ever get again from DGS.
Okay. Item number 7. We establish a finance committee, Mr. Fraser.
Well, I had asked this board to take a look at reestablishing it. And we had, of course, Mr. Lisinski, he got up and forwarded me a copy of it. But we have the original resolution. It's, yeah, we got the electronic version. I'm glad he came prepared. The original objective of the Finance Committee was to help this board do some long-range planning, financial planning for the county. We originally, this particular resolution says 2 members of the board, the treasurer, the commissioner of revenue, deputy county administrator, and county administrator. What we wound up with adopting, I think, which our records aren't very good, we adopted 2 members in the county administrator. And then we couldn't meet because one of the other supervisors would take off for 3 months during the summer. So we wound up not meeting very often at all. So I think that this might be a way of going back, use this as a template, but the way that this is constructed is the supervisors come on for 1 year and then mandatory rotation, and that's good in one way because it gives all the supervisors an opportunity to work on the finance committee, but it makes them the weakest link in the chain. And if you're gonna, I mean, I don't know why we had a resolution that tied the board's hands to start with. And I complained about it at the time, but I was for getting the thing off the ground in any way we could, and it was distasteful, but it was acceptable at the time. I think what we need to do is just study this. It's not going to do us much good for this budget cycle, but we need to get this thing rolling. Have 2 members of the board, maybe the treasurer, the commissioner of revenue, the county administrator. This one makes the county administrator the automatic chair. Again, it's a board committee. It makes the county administrator the chair, and it rotates the board members off to where they're constantly being brought up to speed by the other members. I think we need to revisit that. Just change that to where the board is appointed to serve at the pleasure of this board. The members that they appoint would serve at the pleasure, so they can be reappointed. And then, if nothing else, they elect their chair from the group on an annual basis. But there's no point in board supervisors being the weakest link in their own committee. I see no purpose in that. If I had, maybe I had some notes in front of me, I could have taken half the time to say the same thing. But,
Well, one of the beauty of having minutes that go on for 30 pages is you can sort of review what we discussed last month. And something we should read, and I think what we've decided in our March meeting, our February meeting was Mr. Fraser and I were going to get together and look at this and come back to the board with some recommendations. And I know we pushed some dates around, but we never came up with one. We never met. So if he's still, Mr. Fraser's still open with that, then we have it to do for our next meeting.
So the potential action would then be to adopt a resolution
modifying this after we come back. Because by the time we get this thing up and running, it'll be really too late for this budget cycle anyway.
Well, and so the risk of sticking the neck out too far, this is probably better suited outside of the budget cycle when we're not fighting for every day, when we're more able to look at multiple years. And then by the time you get to the next budget cycle, then you'll have those big long-term suggestions in place.
Right.
completion of that ordinance. Mr. Kirk.
This is the same item that was on the agenda at the last meeting, which was some discussion about trying to find local opportunities to get this done. As you recall, Ms. Carter provided you with a memo and a proposed contract to resolve this. Since then, there was some discussion at the meeting whether it should be advertised in the paper or not. I did some legwork, actually drafted up an ad, talked to the paper, found out how much it costs, and happened to be on the phone with the board member at the time, and it was a lot. So not wanting to use a large percentage of the money that we set aside for that, I did not advertise it. There was word of mouth through board members, and through that, I've heard a couple different names, but only one person has come to me outside of that, and that was Ms. Cluis, who I met with yesterday to discuss potential services she may offer. She's had some experience in courts in the past, in transcription, as well as some land use matters. I don't know her direct experience on doing minutes, and it might be an iterative process. She's offered a sole proprietor type relationship where she would contract with the county for $22 an hour.
I'm sorry, how much?
22. And that is the quote-unquote friends and family discount. So appreciative to her for that. I don't have a good sense right now for how the rate may be different, that is different between the two. I think Ms. Carton's was 30 or 35. How that would shake out with efficiencies based on someone who's done minutes for 20 years for boards versus somebody who's capable of doing transcription. I know that talking with others in the office that there was another individual in the past that was willing to take a look at these minutes like a year ago or so.
Right.
And after they saw the morass of information in the different forms, I think they realized it was more than they bargained for. I did share the table that we developed in this quiz that shows the number of meetings that have occurred that have minutes, don't have minutes, have draft minutes, have paper minutes, have audio, have video, have some or both, some have none, and she didn't appear to be scared off by that. But again, I just don't know her potential efficiency.
Well, I talked to, I mean, I interrupted you. Am I interrupting?
I'm done.
Okay, sorry. I talked to two different individuals. One was Marlena Lee in the building office, and she said that she had worked on some, she thought they were in draft form. I thought I brought it to your attention, but I don't know if I did. She said that she could possibly do some of them, the smaller meetings, maybe while she's at work over there, there would be no added expense. So maybe that's a way to try and delegate some of that. Find out which are the smaller meetings that can be done like that.
Yeah, certainly
Shorter.
happy to do that. My interest is I just want it done.
Right. I had
And
another
done in a
name,
manner
but,
that it can be presented to the board, and the board can look at it and say, yes. And let's get the monkey off our back.
that sounds like two pretty good. I had another individual who's going to set up a meeting and introduce you all, but I think she's going to want more money than that.
Yeah, so the dollars per hour is, has to be combined with how many hours is it going to take and what is their experience in the area. And the board also has to be very clear to me, and so I can be clear to the person just how detailed you want. And for some of these back minutes where you have audio or video files, well, then you could have some detailed minutes if you wanted. But in other cases, it's going to have to be bare bones and based on the information that we have.
Well, for 20, 30 years, we had, basic, like say, bare bones. Anybody want to dive any deeper could go look at the notes themselves or the audio version over at the clerk's office.
I have great concern with relying on audio files or things like that may be in storage that may or may not survive the test of time with audio formats or quality. And knowing that you can go to a minute book in the clerk's office and see the actions that were taken and have some insight as to why the actions were taken. It doesn't have to be the 10 novel, chapter novel, but we should know, to some extent why an action was taken if we can, rather than just 5-0, moving on.
Well, even when we ask for information why actions were taken, we can't get that, so I don't know Do I have any detailed minutes to say the same thing and make it good?
Mr. Chairman, if I may address the board on this. As I said before, the well-bound book of minutes is a legal requirement.
Sure.
And I think Mr. Curry is absolutely correct that there's some level of context that is necessary for public understanding of an action that was taken. You can go overboard, obviously, with a verbatim transcript of a board meeting. A summary is needed. However, the person drafting the minutes should have enough knowledge of local government law, local government procedure, and the personalities involved and the issues before the board that are being voted on and acted on to give it that kind of a context. I'm not advocating for any one particular applicant here, but what I am saying is a person who is simply going to be a typist or stenographer is probably not adequate to the task of doing this board's very important minutes, which are a permanent public record that I know I go back to them to the 1880s and look at them and say, oh, boy, I sure do wish I knew more about what the heck they were talking about there. So I do strongly suggest to this board, as a matter of a legal housekeeping matter, that the board takes action forthwith to get these back minutes done and get them done in a reasonably contextualized manner.
Yeah, with that note, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion that we go ahead and accept Ms. Garton's proposal to have her do them, even if it does sound like a lot of money, $30-some an hour. I think she's a whole lot faster than most people. She knows the situation. She worked here for all those months. She's got the background, and she knows what's supposed to be in the minutes. And we just can't keep putting this off. And I honestly don't think it's going to cost subsequently any more than any other proposal we have. We're just wasting time. So I'd like to make a motion that we go ahead, and I think Ms. Garton's still willing to do that. We go ahead and hire her to get these minutes wrapped up.
What about the proposals that were just made to the public?
That's my motion. I want to get this taken care of, because every month we just seem to push things every month further down the road, and we're not getting anywhere.
Well, we've done exactly what we were supposed to do in the past month. We've brought forth some names of people that it worked.
Right, I hear it, and I think Ms. Garton will do the best job, and she'll be the fastest, and I think it'll be the most efficient. I think it'll be done.
When Ms. Garton was here last August, she said it was the most critical, most important task facing the county, and yet it didn't get done while she was here. Do we have a timeline for our expectations to have these done? We paid once to have them done, then we paid an additional $3,000 or $4,000 to have them done, and now we're asking them to be done again.
Well, we have not, as far as I know, we have not paid to have them done yet. And in Ms. Garton's case, there was no time. I mean, it was, that office was like...
I was here for that meeting, not as a board member, but as a member of the public, and I seem to remember her saying they would get done while she was here. And they're not done. What I would like is a timeline. I mean, I reviewed the August meeting, and it was a very decisive discussion that they would get done on her watch. And I'm concerned about turning the task over to someone that has not accomplished it yet, again.
Well, Ms. Garton's defense, every meeting that this board had from when she came on as the interim in July through when she left in the end of January, all those minutes were completed. All those minutes were done. And this board decided very early on in her tenure, if not even before she came on board, that we needed to put aside money to hire somebody specifically to do those back minutes, because they were in such terrible shape as far as whether they were recorded or whether they were on YouTube or whether they were notes. And we took a tremendous beating in the public over the fact that we didn't get these minutes completed. And, it was right, and rightfully so. As Mr. Goff has said, by law, we need to have these minutes. And, I'm going to second Mr. Parrish's motion, because I really just think that we need to we put the money aside. I think we're going to spend less by hiring somebody who knows the territory, for lack of a better way of saying it, in many respects. and can probably get this done quicker, more efficiently, and with a better product. And I appreciate that Ms. Lee has stepped forward, but I would hate to see her get distracted off of her day job to do this, because I think this is going to be a handful. And so we have a proposal on the table, we have somebody that most people trust to get this done right, and if she's willing to do it, I think it's the right solution, and we need to get it done now.
Do we have a deadline in place for their completion?
As fast as possible.
Well, I
Yeah,
think we need to do a little better than
She already
that.
had 5 months after she said she would have them done. 5 months went by with no work on.
What do you think would be a fair deadline, Gary?
If you were assigning me with a task and I didn't have to do anything else,
Yes.
and knowing what I know about the data,
6 months.
I would give it within that.
6 more months?
No.
Why would you even do something like that? You've got 3 taxpayers locally that stepped forward and said they'd do it.
Well, he's coming up
I
with
think,
that.
I would not want to see it go any longer than 3 months with some back and forth. So prepare, submit for review and consideration, and approval.
3 months?
Mr. Chairman, may I point out something to all members? It's my understanding that at least 1, if not 2, of the meetings that are missing minutes, we don't have an audio recording of it because there was a malfunction of the equipment. So there's 2 months that are going to be rather difficult, and it may involve that person who's compiling, perhaps contacting each of the members for their recollections and notes. So I know that, I know that from having discussed it with Ms. Garton some time ago, that she didn't have an audio recording of some of them. Some we're going to have to go back to YouTube before the Rappahannock News was taking these videos. So I would say that Gary's probably on the money when it comes to whomever's doing it. Just getting the stuff, getting the material and listening to it, digesting it's going to take some time. And it's probably going to be close to a full-time job for that 3-month period because of the lack of clear recordings. And so I'd say to be reasonable, if you're going to set a deadline, that you might want to make it 90 days.
And we don't have enough money set aside. If it's going to be a full-time job for Ms. Garden, it's going to be a lot more money.
Well, what did the board set aside for that?
$10,000.
$10,000.
10,000?
Didn't she say in her proposal that she thought that was enough?
No, she did not. She said she didn't have any idea that would be enough.
And so I think that's where, direction from the board, whoever's going to do it, as to what you're looking at coming out the other end, that it's not a transcription word for word, it's not verbatim, it's not.
Yeah, I don't think it has to be that difficult. What we've got over there, Peggy and Diane did for years and years, there were 3 to 5 pages depending on the length of the meeting and the amount of work that we had to do, and that was sufficient. Like Mr. Goff says, maybe there's times that you wish you had a little bit more information there as to what was discussed before the vote. But if we don't, I think that this is, you're going to hear some more flack if we take somebody that's not a taxpayer that had the opportunity, and it was her idea to get it done within the last 5 or 6 months. And she didn't do it, and then we're going to turn taxpayer dollars over to her to pay her extra to do it.
She took notes, she was taking notes the whole time during the meetings and I presume they're in her possession.
Those meetings are already done, we don't need those notes.
Okay.
Part of the August meeting was, the reason that the $10,000 was allocated was to hire a transcriptionist to complete the minutes. So, to my mind, that wasn't done, and it should have been done in a timely manner.
That was the vote, that we were going to hire a transcriptionist to do the work. And the minutes wouldn't be much different than what Ms. Garden was doing. But as far as her notes, she has no notes for those meetings, because she wasn't here.
Yeah, I'm saying.
And those notes, that if they exist, I think Jan Palmer worked on some of them, Marlena worked on some of them, maybe Ms. Tomasello worked on them.
And we have various documents in the files, various levels of completeness, various source documents available.
Yeah, I think that we should use the taxpayers. It's
I
their
think we
money.
should get the job done.
Well, we've done exactly what we discussed last month. We've now brought forward the names of people to do it, and the board doesn't want to use them now. And they're the taxpayers that pay the money. So we're gonna double charge them and not even give them an opportunity to get some of their tax money back. They've already paid for this once, maybe twice. I think that we take Ms. Cluis and Marlena and work with it.
I think it's a more efficient use of taxpayer money to get the person that we think can do the best job in the quickest amount of time.
She had 5 months, it was her idea, and she didn't do it.
I didn't agree with that.
Well, go back and look at the video, you don't have to agree with me, watch the
The
video.
video is very plain that that was the intention behind that vote, and it didn't happen. So my concern is that if we're now entrusting the same task to the same person that didn't accomplish it
The first
the
time.
second time, you know, we're gonna be back in the same boat in 3 months.
Well, I've seen the notes that this individual has turned over since July, and they're voluminous, and there's numerous minutes from numerous meetings, and the product is outstanding. So I don't know why there's any question here about the person's competence to be able to do this.
I didn't question her competence.
She
I
didn't-
questioned
she
the
didn't say
deadline,
what she
the
suggested
ability
that she
to
was
get it
going
done.
to do.
I think she's a very
Well,
competent
as a big government, she
individual.
had a full-time job before, and now she does not. Now she's got time.
All she had to do was delegate the job, she didn't actually have to do it.
That's exactly what she said she was gonna do, she was gonna find a transcriptionist, and she did not do that.
And I'm not aware of the efforts she made for that, or what pitfalls she came across, I just don't know.
She never told us what she did, or whether she did anything.
I think this is the fastest, most positive thing we can do to wrap it up. And, Mr. Phelps got a good point.
So what are we doing?
Well, we have a motion and a second, Mr. Chairman.
All right, all those in favor of the motion? Vote aye.
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 All opposed, nay?
Nay.
Aye.
And the deadline was included in the resolution?
No. Just fast as possible.
We couldn't do that.
How can you have a deadline? How do you know it's not
Well, you got 23 sets of minutes, you figure you do 2 a week, it takes you 13 weeks, that's 3 months.
Mr. Curry,
According to the offer, we have, either party has the opportunity to terminate at any time, according to the, what I read in the thing. So if it's not fast enough, we just, move on to somebody else, but at least we'll get started.
I hope.
We were going to get started. We did exactly what we said we were gonna do a month ago, but for some reason that wasn't fast enough for you.
I was ready to hire her last month, I just went along with other suggestion. But it's, want to get these minutes over with.
Okay, next item. County update, Mr. Curry.
Well, I've got 2 months under my belt. Keep finding new and interesting things to review. Budgets keep me very busy, but it's also very informative. So you really are able to reach in and touch every line, and helps you become informed on what the local government is doing when you see where the dollars are spent. For those that aren't aware, we had a significant windstorm. I've been in contact with some board members and have been after Rappahannock Electric to provide us some information to let us know what they're doing, what contingency plans they have in place ahead of time for situations like this, and their ability to scale up. They did provide me with a document that I put it in front of your seat about 40 minutes before this meeting. No great surprises there based on other things that you've heard, but they do note at one point there were 96% of our citizens or their customers that were without power at one point in time. This really is a a monumental event. And it will take some time for them to get all of our citizens back up. They're publicly stating Wednesday for a majority. I don't think they have said all. And I suspect some customers that are furthest down the line will probably take a little longer, but we'll see. As they move to as areas come online and are freed up, and the crews are freed up to move double up and triple up in those most critically hit area, which apparently is Madison and us. So we wish them the best of luck in their work. The courthouse complex here came up Saturday morning at 11. So I was a little worried about that relative to generator 911, and that all worked out in the long run. Mr. Condenquist and the sheriff had to manually turn the primary generator on because it failed to start automatically. We've already had the contractor out today to work on that. Your volunteer fire and rescue departments are to be commended. They were very busy Friday and Saturday with all down lines. As the lines were energized, you had brush fires everywhere. And it was just nonstop, fire after fire. They did a great job. We were supposed to have interviews on Friday for emergency services coordinator and deputy emergency manager director or coordinator. Those were canceled. I will reschedule those at a later time. And one of the things that, as I was following through the events, I think it's important for us after everybody gets back on their feet. We schedule an after-action review of this whole wind event. Make sure we know what we were able to do well and maybe what areas we had some issues, and see what problems we need to solve so we don't stub our toe in the future. One of those is a critical infrastructure list with REC. I received that from them, and it didn't include everything I think it probably should, so we'll get that updated as one item. Very good news, Lauren May has worked her magic, and we received final word that we will receive the $20,000 for the AFID grant. That'll be coming probably within a month or so. That's very good. As I told the board, we may reserve some of that money to help us with the brush issue at Amosville that is partially caused because of the thoughts behind the AFID grant, that we might be able to pelletize that material and use it for beneficial reuse. So that's good. And I am working with VDOT to involve them in that pile, and I'll keep you informed on that. Also very good news relative to CenturyLink. There have been some billing errors going back several years. Sandy Carter and Lauren and Dawn, and Lauren in my office, Dawn in the Treasurer's office, identified these billing errors, and we received a credit for $20,000. So I congratulate the staff for digging into issues like that, for looking hard at the numbers to make sure we know what's going on. So my view is forward, and we will continue to make sure that staff has their eyes open for opportunities like that. It's a big deal, and I really appreciate their effort on that. I told you about DGS. This will be the third time. I'm happy that that is done. Those vehicles are taken care of. Let's move on. The public safety radio grant that the board approved, that had a 60-day window on getting that order in. After the grant award, which was the end of February, that was done. So we've met that deadline. So $320,000 worth of radios were ordered, and those will be delivered in line with the rollout of the system, and it'll be coordinated with the project manager for Harris. So those are the items that I noted for you. I do think it's important we circle back around on the storm and make sure we learn everything we can from it.
Have you had any time to look at getting an RFP for the mulching at that pile?
I have not prepared that because I'm shared some information through email. I'm working hard on the VDOT angle because a lot of that material, for different percentages, a lot of that material is from the roadway and should rightfully be paid with road maintenance funds or other road funds that are generated through gas taxes. That's why you pay them. So I would rather not burden citizen taxpayers with all of that if we can have VDOT carry some of that load. And I met with VDOT on the 6-year secondary program, preliminary information on that last week. We talked about that, and I'm working with Mr. Nesbitt to find a way to do just that in an appropriate manner.
In the meantime, we're still accepting brush.
Well, we accept brush from staff, and I offered to Mr. Nesbitt for the storm debris if VDOT was wanted to use that site for a temporary storage and reduction site, that would be acceptable so long as when they left the site there was less there than when they showed up. Obviously, there's a lot of debris on the side of the road right now.
With respect to what we're now referencing as Winter Storm Riley, when we have the hot wash on this that you discussed, I think it would be very beneficial to have somebody with some authority from REC attend at least a portion of that. No doubt our first responders and VDOT and the linemen out there have done and are doing a magnificent job. But I can't help but think that, and I know we're small, that we're just the tip of the tail of the dog on this thing. I look at all the counties that REC services, and we're constantly at the top of the list here during Winter Storm Riley about our percentage of outages, which is now it's dipped, I think, to a little bit above 30%, but that's still, 4 days, 3 days into a storm. That's a big number, and it far exceeds any other counties, from a percentage perspective.
I asked them if they could be at this meeting to speak to the board and the public, and they thought their time right now was probably better spent in other areas, but they did commit to coming to a board meeting and speaking to the board and the public to help you understand their processes. And I think you can discover together whether there are ways they can do things better. And this is a very rare occurrence. So we wouldn't want them to staff up to the extent that it would be necessary to fix this in a day, because we wouldn't like the rates that go along with that. So it's this, how do you take a reasonable approach that you can reasonably resolve issues? And most of the time it's through cooperative agreements with other utilities, and then they come into the area. So I know there's some of that happening. I just don't know
where it's happening, or if Fredericksburg is getting all that attention, and Madison and Rappahannock or not.
I also asked the Weather Service to provide me some information on what they saw as far as data, and interestingly,
Data.
your county attorney's passing. Slate Mills had highest recorded wind gust 85 miles an hour. So I don't know what equipment that was on, but I asked the National Weather Service to provide some information as well, and they provided me some email with similar information. So this is a significant event. So we're very fortunate. I have not heard of very many injuries, very many significant damages to structures. Very, very fortunate. The fact that leaves were off, that is huge.
Well, as Mr. Kandanquist reported to some board members here, noted, unlike the derecho, which was here and gone in a short period of time, this was a 48-hour event.
Yeah, REC couldn't be out fixing lines for the most part for the first 24 hours because it was still the event.
Thank you.
Okay, you probably did the information, correspondence.
Yeah,
Building permit.
in your packet are the building permit report and the VDOT report. Let me just reiterate on VDOT. The plan right now is to have your public hearing for the 6-year secondary plan in May. So we'll probably bring to you in April some preliminary information to discuss and digest. I've asked for your feedback offline on what the board is wants to add to the tail end of that 6-year plan when you have some money coming open on your unpaid road priority list.
No, recess till 7 p.m.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I guess you need a motion to recess.
I move to go to recess until 7 p.m. Second.
Which day?
All those in favor,
7
say aye.
p.m. later this evening on 5 March 2018.
Aye.
Mr. Goff.
Chair is called the meeting to order.
I'm sorry.
And the first item we have is a public hearing. Any particular topic?
And let me just say, I left presentations on there. My old habit of keeping items on the agenda even when there are none, and then list none, there are no presentations. The public hearing tonight is to repeal Chapter 21 of the Code. This is a fire and rescue services agreement that was adopted many years ago. The board taking action last month to approve the updated fire services and rescue EMS agreement. Mr. Canquist entertaining us all.
I think if we're doing that, put it in the sink.
At any rate, your action last month to approve the new agreement allows you to repeal this agreement because it's no longer valid with the new agreement being in place. However, when you repeal or change your ordinance, you must go through a public hearing, and that's why we did it.
Mr. Curry, did you check to make sure the advertisements were properly posted?
I did indeed, and I included a copy of those advertisements in the packet.
And they were run for 2 consecutive weeks,
Yes, sir.
not more than 21, no more than 5 days?
Yes, sir.
Means that you have a valid public hearing on the person.
Well, we open public hearing by saying that anyone wishing or caring to speak may do so. Simply raise your hand and state the district that you're from. Direct your comments to the board, restrict your comments to the item on the agenda. Anybody wishing to speak, I'm going to open the public hearing now. Anybody care to speak? Yes.
Hayes Glennie, Jackson District, I agree with repealing. Thank you.
Yes, Henry.
Henry Qualifying, Hampton District. I wanted to say something about the prior meeting. We talk about precedent and all that. I've been here 42 years, and this was the first time that I saw parliamentary procedure used to stifle debate, and it really kind of bothered me. That motion to not allow other people to be recommended for the planning commission, to me, was stifling the debate. And we talk about open hearings and open meetings, and I think everyone who applied should have had a chance or a hearing from those of you to hear what their qualifications were and why they should be on it. And it struck me as extremely strange as the people who voted and moved to close the hearing were then upset that their nominee was not discussed when they cut off dialogue about everybody else. So I just think that's not the way to run small government, the way people, this is small government, this is not the General Assembly, this is not, and I think everybody has a right to be heard, and I just think what happened this afternoon was really quite wrong.
Interesting.
Anyone else care to speak? Yeah.
Paul Pilmar, Stonewall, Hawthorne. I too agree with this repeal of Chapter 21. As you know, the Fire Services Agreement took years to put in place, and it's time for this old one to go, and the new one's already in place, so it's the right thing to do.
Anyone else care to speak? Anyone else care to speak? I declare public. Public comment.
Public
Closed.
hearing.
Public hearing. Comment. All right, public. I'll say it again, I declare public hearing closed. Any comments from the board?
Nothing other than the fact we can go ahead and
Appropriate action would move adoption of the ordinance included in your packet.
okay. So, yeah, I'll make a motion that we, what's that?
Adoption of the ordinance.
That we adopt this ordinance in the packet.
I'll second, Mr. Chairman.
Motion made and second. All those in favor say aye.
Roll call, sir.
Roll call. Mr. Frazier.
Aye.
Mr. Lozinski.
Aye.
Ms. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Parrish.
Aye.
And I also. Next item on the agenda is public comment. Second introduction. Anyone wishing to speak may do so. Just simply raise your hand and state your district when recognized. Direct your comments to the board, and I'll open public comment. Anybody wishing to speak? Yes.
You've missed me if I didn't comment. Page Glenny, Jackson District. I strongly agree with providing the interim emergency management coordinator, Mr. Kentquist, financial compensation for his service. The 9 months to date, I believe it's 9 months to date, far exceed the 3 months envisioned when he volunteered. Please do something to support this wonderful volunteer. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Anyone else wishing to speak? Declare public comment closed.
Mr. Chairman, if I could take a moment.
Yes.
I think Mr. Dorfman was speaking about me since I put forth the motion to end the nominations, but that is something that we have not done a lot. We've done that very often. And what I anticipated, what we would have is some of the hanky-panky that went on, so I thought that we would just try to avoid that and not have to have a public debate about the candidates that weren't qualified. As it is, it appears that the board violated its own ordinance earlier today because under 170-139 of the zoning ordinance, where it talks about the makeup of the planning commission, under 170-139C, membership, be C1, the planning commission shall consist of 7 members appointed by the board, all of whom shall be residents of the county, qualified by knowledge and experience to make decisions on questions of community growth and development. And there clearly was only one candidate that filled that qualification. Yes, sir, it's not my opinion, it's knowledge. The others have no noticeable experience, and I was just trying to save some public embarrassment and just appoint somebody that could actually start working.
Mr. Frazier.
So that's all it is. It's not supposed to be a dialogue. I just was trying to explain what I was trying to do.
You are entitled to vote for who you think is the best.
Mr. Chairman, we're having a dialogue.
I think the general public is entitled to hear qualifications.
Sorry,
Yes.
I just wanted to say that, while everyone's entitled to their opinion, we're not all entitled to our own facts. So that's all I have to say on it.
Yeah, takes us to the old business, consideration of compensation for interim emergency management coordinator. Mr. Lozinski?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe last month put forward the idea of considering compensation for Mr. Condenquist for his volunteer service as emergency management coordinator. As we've heard here in a couple of cases, a couple of folks articulate that I think this started out as a short-term 2 to 3 month bridge assignment. That's the right way. Bridge volunteer service turned into 8 or 9 months now and counting. And we just had a major incident. Mr. Condenquist was in the commander's chair for that. So I know what part of the problem here was how do we do this? As Mr. Condenquist is not an employee of the county, and I believe at our February meeting, the county administrator was asked to do a little research to see if we could somehow make this happen, and then come back and see if there was an amount that was appropriate. So I believe Mr. Curry has actually done some research on this since our last meeting.
Yes, consulted with our HR director as well as treasurer, and their opinion is the most appropriate way to do this would be through a one-time payment, and then Mr. Condenquist would be issued a 1099 at the end of the year for tax purposes.
But he continues to serve as interim manager, so how can it be a one-time payment? It's an ongoing situation until we hire a new manager.
I suppose the board can do whatever it wants. We were supposed to interview on Friday, but that got canceled and will be rescheduled, so I expect to have something on board relatively soon. The payment amount can be sized however the board thinks is appropriate, recognizing that it may be another weeks or month.
Or we can, see how long it does take and decide what the appropriate amount would be at the end of the entire volunteer service period. That's the other option as well. Although $1 today is worth more than $1 tomorrow.
Also, if we're paying him for the work that he volunteered to do up until now, then we can maybe see if he wants to volunteer for the next week or two until we hire the replacement. Maybe that would work.
My question about the one-time payment is because I've elected to address it further down the road. I think we should reach a resolution on how to pay Mr. Cantinquist this evening, but also have in place how we're going to pay him for his work until the permanent manager comes on board.
Yeah, I don't know that there's necessarily an inability to have two one-time payments. If it were to please the board, we just don't want to be in a regular payment situation for continuing work. That becomes an employee and there's a whole lot of other strings that go along with it.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, may I add something to that if I could?
Go ahead. Laura?
Over the past 12 years or so, when I have updated and revised the county emergency operations plan, it took me roughly about 2 to 3 weeks to do it. And I was being compensated at that time for the time that I put in to revise and update the county emergency plan. The last one was, well, the first one was in 2008, the second 2012, and the third was 2016. And I don't remember exactly what the hourly figure was, but I was given a 1099 and I was compensated for the amount of time that I spent on the working on the county plan, and I put in for that through the normal channels of forwarding that to the county administrator and then on over to the county treasurer. And just as a point of information, since the 5th of June last year when the board appointed me as the interim, and this is kind of a rough guesstimate, right? Between the two incidents that we had, the gas leak and the nor'easter this past weekend, plus the radio conference calls and attending meetings and training, I put in somewhere in the neighborhood about 198 hours. I just wanted to let you know that I've been keeping track of that just in case this conversation is
You calculate that? Did you calculate that?
I think if we do something, we should. We should do something again later. There's 4 hours before the transition between the minister's is a candidate for the job as an employee. We don't know what, we haven't had interviews yet. Then we may have to revisit this after tonight. I mean, make a decision tonight, but what's fair is obviously we take advantage of volunteers. This is even more so than most of the time.
Well, I believe the range of the amount that was discussed at the last meeting was between $7,500 and $10,000. Given that we're going to take another look, it sounds like the board is going to take another look at this at the end of his tenure as a volunteer. Maybe I would put a motion forward to do the $7,500 at this time, with the idea that, as Ms. Smith pointed out, to revisit this whenever the end of the volunteer service comes. I'll put that in the form of a motion, Mr. Chairman.
What do you consider would be an hourly rate?
Well, I didn't have a number until Mr. Cantinquist gave us his 198 tonight.
Right.
I had simply proposed a range previously, and I didn't hear any pushback from board members, so I was going on my range. I don't know. I believe the...
I mean, is $30 a decent rate, or? I mean, y'all got any input on what you consider to be a
That's the advertised rate for the new position.
Is
30 to 35, isn't it?
35.
So 30 would be a little under $6,000. Would that be more appropriate in this situation?
35 is closer to 7,000, so maybe...
I would agree with 7,500 because He stepped into a position and had to, basically, he couldn't tread water, he had to start swimming against the current.
Right, yeah.
But plus, if board members feel between now and the end of Mr. Condenquist's tenure that, you know, $7,500 is generous, in other words, if he doesn't put that many more hours in, you know, then we don't have to do anything once we reconsider it. It's not that we would, but knowing that he's going to spend more hours, I don't think 7,500 is too far afield.
Okay.
Well, not only did he volunteer, but he did an excellent job.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chairman, can I just add one other thing?
Don't screw up your chances here.
No, all I want to say
Sometimes
is
it's
that
best to remain quiet.
until, again, the dust finally settles, I'm willing, because the need is there, and the needs of the residents and the businesses and such of the county, I think that, I would be remiss if I didn't want to continue to serve the county as I do, whether I get compensated or not, but I just wanted to mention that until the dust finally settles, my original offer from April a year ago still stands, and I'm willing to continue to serve the county and its residents and businesses, and this board and Mr. Carey as well.
Thank you.
So, Mr.
Can
Chairman,
we have a motion?
got a motion.
That's the motion.
7,500 was the motion.
Motion,
Which
7,500.
I did look at it at the end of Mr. Condenquist's tenure.
I'll second that.
Motion made and second. This is roll call.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Parrish.
Aye.
Ms. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Lozinski.
Aye.
Mr. Frazier.
Aye.
And I also. And with a hearty thank you.
Welcome. And thank you for your support.
Let's see. New business?
Yes, sir. First item on new business is the authorization for advertisement of joint public hearing of the Planning Commission to amend Rappahannock County Code, Chapter 170-139C, which is regarding membership for Planning Commission. Please, the board, I'll have Mr. Dahl provide some information that he prepared for the board, and then you can have discussion on what, if anything, you want to advertise for public hearing.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Curry, at the last meeting, the board had expressed some interest in amending the Rappahannock County Code. There was some discussion about what the length of service or of the terms of each member who's appointed is or ought to be. So the board asked me to draft a resolution wherein that issue is taken up. The resolution is in your package, and it's set forth in a total of 6 paragraphs, wherein Mr. Kirk and I are directed to properly advertise this joint public hearing, and I think it was envisioned that that would probably be at the April regular meeting, and you could hear from the public on the issues there. I would suggest that you authorize me, as suggested in the resolution, to draft the advertising in such a way that the public is apprised of all the issues that will be considered by the board as far as amendment. So it's what I call a bracketing approach. So in general terms, once I advertise it as to this is what is proposed to do, you're not pinned down to do what's in it, in the ad or in the resolution. It would give you flexibility to pass whatever amendments to that code are properly advertised. And as I said, if we bracket it such that the public is apprised that you're thinking about shortening or lengthening the terms of these members, either only the members from the BZA and the board, or all the members all together, all those issues are in play, and you can take what actions that you deem appropriate.
So
So, Mr. Chairman, I would like to also instruct the county attorney to, while he's making this advertisement, to also consider the possibility of two possibilities. One, of not having a representative on the planning commission from the board of supervisors or the BCA, like they do in Fauquier County, for example, or having a non-voting member on representing those two boards on the planning commission. And one of the reasons I say that is that the board member on the planning commission, technically, if he's voting, he should be voting for his entire board. And he's got no way of knowing what his entire board is thinking about. He or she has no way of knowing that. And so they're really voting their own opinion. And and in the end, the BZA member and the supervisor member, they have the vote anyway. So they don't really need a vote at that point. But I'm thinking that when I really thought about it, we don't need a member of either board on the planning commission. The planning commission can do just fine with their 5 members that are appointed for 4 years. And I think that may actually simplify things. I know it's good to have a board member that comes, to the subsequent board meeting to relay, information, what happened and whatnot. And I know also it's not a bad situation where that board member would have had an opportunity to ask questions while he was sitting on that board, even though he didn't vote. But at any rate, we all have the opportunity to go to the planning commission meetings and see what goes on and come to our own boards, knowledgeable of the situation. So I'm not advocating any of this. I'm just saying I would like that to be included in the public hearing for the public. I would like to see what the public has to say or what the public thinks about that idea, and that would give us an opportunity to think also the pros and cons of this new situation. I think the state of Virginia is about half. I think half the counties only have the 5 board members, and the other half, like Fauquier, some other counties have a board of supervisors, but not a BZA, and some of them vote, some of them don't vote, and it's all over the place. So anyway, I'd like to have that, if you all don't mind, have that advertised too. Thank you.
I could give that some thought, but I think the board of supervisor member is supposed to represent the board because the zoning ordinance, if you will, is the spoken position of the board. So a board member there would be representing the board because it would be trying to make sure that the zoning ordinance is followed. So it's incumbent upon the board member who serves on the planning commission to fully educate themselves as much as possible on the zoning ordinance so that they can represent the board. And that I think is a critical thing that this board decided on many years ago, is that it would have somebody there to try and make sure that the best interests of the county was put forward at each meeting, that there were applications. And we can all attend a meeting, but if 3 of us show up, we can't talk. We can't get up and ask a question because we would be conducting public business in an unscheduled meeting. I know we haven't always followed that when 3 or more of us have showed up at a meeting, 1 or 2 have gotten up and said things, but we're not supposed to. It's a violation of authority because we are conducting business. We're asking questions, we're making comments. So we can go and we can view, but we can't participate. So I think it's very important that we keep a board member on there.
I think the matter of making members, voting or non-voting members, is pretty far afield of this condominium business that's in front of us this evening, and I'd like to discuss it separately at a different time. I think if we were going to discuss it this evening, it should have either been on the agenda or been added as an addendum item. As it is, we have no basis for discussion on this because it was just brought up now.
It's on the agenda, it is.
Oh, sorry.
Has nothing to do with it.
Next item, okay, sorry.
But I don't think it's a good idea myself I mean, what kind of problems are we fixing with that? The only problem that I know of that we're fixing, or attempting to fix, is the language that we always went by is not exactly, we weren't following it exactly, we were following the custom rather than the language. And I think if we just keep it simpler, where we are setting the term of the appointment of the BZA member and the board rep to the planning commission, we can make them from 1 to 4 years and leave the other positions alone, because we need these people to go take training. And if somebody's going to take the time to go become a certified BZA member or a certified planning commission member, and they might not get reappointed next year, and they've only been on there 1 year, you're not going to get anybody, because it looks like we don't value their time. And I think if somebody's going to make a 4-year commitment to be appointed to the planning commission, then we need to leave those terms alone, 4 years. The other 2 members I've always seen, and we've always appointed them as representatives for 1 year or 2 years, back to back. They've always been seen as representatives of the other bodies, and I think that's what we need to be addressing, and not print something that's going to be complicated. We're going to have people coming up here angry, if nothing else, about something that is misunderstood. Let's just fix the immediate problem.
So are you willing to hear what this is a public hearing.
Yeah, but the more stuff that you put out there, it's going to be more complicated, and people aren't going to be able to come up and make, I don't think they're going to be able to, keep track of all the changes that we could possibly wind up doing at the end of the meeting. We only have one problem to fix, and that's the exact language of the term of the appointment of the BZA and the board rep, and I think that's all we really need to concentrate on. We start making it, I don't know why we're trying to fix something that's not broken. That's I guess, my assessment of it. Keep it simple. And I don't know what the board's trying to fix.
Well,
We need to keep the planning commission as cohesive as possible, and I don't think that's on the agenda anymore.
just an idea. A lot of boards have members, but they don't have a vote. And so what you're saying is you'd like to keep it the way that there is a BCA member and a supervisor member, and they both have votes.
Yeah, I don't see why they should do that. I don't know what the purpose is of making them non-voting members.
Well, they get a vote when it comes to their board, so they kind of get 2 votes.
Not every one of them, because some are special use permits and some are special exception.
Right, but that individual member, or rather it's a BCA.
It's not a dispositive body anyway. They just make recommendations to the next body.
Right.
So it wouldn't matter really if they have a vote or not. It just,
right.
Again, you're making that person feel like their time is not valuable. It doesn't matter what they do.
Okay.
They can't make a legitimate argument if they don't have a vote at the end of the afternoon, at the end of the meeting.
No, Mr. Chairman, I guess I sort of come down the middle of this. I do think there's merit with the supervisor being on the planning commission. And I think it's important that member be able to come back to the board and report in. But I also think that it may be best that member not necessarily have a vote. But I would be very interested to hear what the public has to say about it, which is the whole purpose of the drill here, is to see if we're going to have a public hearing to get the public's thoughts. And if they feel then supervisors should be voting along with the members of the planning commission, then, well,
Could I ask you that question? Where do these types of ideas come from?
No,
You know what?
no, 2 months.
I'm very curious as well. I mean, with all respect, Mr. Lozinski, you just came off the planning commission, and I don't remember you ever abstaining from a vote.
oh, I didn't. No, I absolutely didn't. No, I know, because the board member had the right to vote.
But you didn't have to vote. If you didn't think it was right to vote, you could have abstained.
It's just, again, it's not as
Well,
tough as
abstaining
You
is
you were on the planning commission for a long time, Ron, and so when I guess there's other kind of votes other than permits. For example, if you're voting on recommending zoning glitches, cleaning up, stuff like that, that's also a vote,
Sure, but it's not, it's just a recommendation because
Right.
this
Yeah.
body or the BZA is the one that makes it.
Yeah, okay. So I'm fine with retracting that suggestion. I just thought it would be something to think about. I don't have any strong feeling one way or the other. Just thought that as long as we were in this, school of thought, we would, think about if we're doing it the absolute best way. Because like I say, about half the counties do it one way, half the counties do it another way, and I really don't know what's the best way. I just thought
I've never done it any other way. I just think this way,
well,
I think this way has worked.
it's fine with me. I really don't care.
I'm still driving a 95 and a 96 truck. I don't change things very often. So,
Yeah, I've got a nice stuff too.
it's pretty dependable.
All right, well, never mind.
Well, that being the case, Mr. Chairman, I guess I will put forward a motion to pass the resolution authorizing the advertisement of a joint public hearing on April 2nd, 2018 with the Planning Commission to amend Rappahannock County Code Chapter 170-139C, and that the county attorney draft the ad in a broad range so that all possible outcomes to be considered are advertised to the public. Did I frame that correctly?
Mr. Lozinski, is that including the amendment proposed by Mr. Parrish or not?
No.
Okay.
I think you withdrew that concept.
Right, yeah, I was going to say like it.
So we're not going to see what you're proposing before it goes out for advertisement?
I don't see how we could send to each individual member a text of the advertisement, but it would read substantially, I think, as paragraph number 1 does in the resolution.
Yeah, I just hate to see us take the 5 membership of the magisterial district members that have always been appointed for 4-year terms and asking them and encouraging them. I mean, we actually said that we were going to require it, that they become certified planning commission members, and they may only be appointed for a year or 2. I think we need to only fix the problem that surfaced. The 2 appointees, the one for the BZA and the board.
Right.
I really feel that if we're looking at maybe amending the ordinance where every one of the planning commissioners would be, we're just putting more work on our plate.
Right.
I think only those 2 positions should be advertised to be from 1 to 4 years.
Correct.
And then that way, I don't feel uncomfortable with having an ad go out before we've actually approved something. I just don't think we need to be messing with the planning commission the way it stands right now, except for these clearing the language up on these representative appointments.
So if I'm hearing you right, perhaps paragraph 1, where it reads an amendment to Article 6, Boards, Commissions, Committees, 170, 139C, 1 and 2, where the membership thereof and the terms of service of said members of the Planning Commission are set forth. The said amendments may increase or decrease the length of term of service, and then delete until you get to the future members of the Planning Commission who are also concurrent members of the Board of Supervisors and the Board of Zoning Appeals for any length of time from 1 year to 4 years as the case may be. So you would be deleting of the future commissioners appointed by the Board of Supervisors and the length of service of.
Yeah, I don't know, it's still kind of wordy. If somebody asked me, I would change it to read, just change C1, add a sentence to the bottom of it. You know, your lead-in sentences, there may be one member from each magisterial district, one member from the board, and one member from the BZA, period. That's current language. The last sentence could read, members appointed to represent the board or BZA can be appointed for terms of from 1 to 4 years. And that would take care of the problem. It would make the ad cheaper. Just they don't want to give us too much free stuff. That would be much smaller because you're only changing, you're just adding one sentence. You're not striking anything. You're just clearing up the problem that we seem to have right now, that we weren't following the exact wording of the ordinance. I know it doesn't do what Mr. Goff was saying, is that it gives us a little more latitude, but I don't think we need any latitude. I don't think the public needs to be concerning themselves with all the terrible things that we might do. We just might do this. We might appoint somebody from the board or the BZA from 1 year to 4 years. Or we might reappoint them, consecutive 1-year terms like we've been doing. We would just have the language to allow that.
So I guess I'm trying to follow a bouncing ball here between this resolution to call for a public hearing and the actual changes that were suggested to the ordinance itself, which, if that's what we were doing.
Well, with all due respect, I appreciate the time that went into it, but I just think it's too much. It's a situation when I was taking a drafting course years ago. The instructor said that they got paid for going through these plans that were submitted to the federal government, and they would call out drawings of 1/4-inch nuts and 1/4-inch bolts, and all you had to do at the bottom of the page is just add that you need 27 nuts and bolts. But the taxpayer was having to pay for each drawing of a nut and each drawing of a bolt. We don't need that much language. We just need a sentence that says that the BZA and board reps to the Planning Commission may be appointed for 1 to 4 years.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes.
What I would be wary of is at this stage trying to actually draft the amendment before the public has a chance to weigh in. That's number one. Number two, that as a drafting challenge, we don't want to set up an apparent dichotomy between paragraph 1 and paragraph 2. So for purposes of clarity, sometimes in statutory drafting, in drafting these types of things, it's necessary to have some redundancy so that it's absolutely crystalline that what sentence refers to what part of the preceding or antecedent language. And it's for that reason that I caution the board that when you're trying to describe what you're doing, it's very important to have precision, and it's very important to avoid overgeneralizations or oversimplifications. We want to make sure that it's clear that the intent of the board, if that is your intent, is that the concurrent members are limited to whatever terms the board would decide, and not other members. So there's never any argument about which takes precedence, paragraph 2 or paragraph 1. So I think it's, at least from my standpoint here, the lawyer, for us to describe those members as the members who are concurrently serving on both boards makes it crystalline that we're not referring to any other members.
Well, I think the sentence stands alone. It said that you could add it to 1 or 2. It doesn't mention the other members at all. It says the members appointed to represent the board or the BZA can be appointed for terms from 1 to 4 years. I don't see how that could be misconstrued in the other way.
Well, it would be my preference that from a drafting angle, that it be inserted into paragraph 2.
Well, let's insert it in paragraph 2.
Because that's where we're talking about the terms of service. And so it makes sense to put the except as to those members who are also concurrently serving on both boards, whose terms shall be as follows. And there can be no question.
It would work there, probably better, you're right, but I'm just trying to save us a lot of ink and trees.
Well, I think the add will be very simple. The add will, the way I envision it, would say that the Board of Supervisors will consider the length of service of future members of the Planning Commission who are also concurrent members of the Board of Supervisors and Board of Zoning Appeals for any length of time from 1 to 4 years, period. That's all the add will say. And then if that's what you're instructing me to do, is strike out the part about the members at large, the members from the magisterial districts. If you're not going to consider that issue, I agree that ought to be stricken from the resolution. And if that's the core of it.
Well, I think your language takes care of the problem that we have, and it wouldn't have the ability to cause any disruption with the rest of the body.
Right, if we strike out the part about the members from the magisterial districts, then all this board would be able to consider legally would be the length of service or the terms of those members who are concurrent members of the BZA and the BOS.
That fixes the problem that we have, and I think at least, give the members that are appointed from the magisterial districts the, at least the comfort of knowing that if they're going to put forth the time to, go out of town and take these courses, that, their time will be valuable.
And then, Mr. Lozinski, would you consider amending your motion to reflect what's been discussed?
Well, as I said, trying to follow the bouncing ball, if somebody could again run past me the change to the language, the specific language change. It's on the resolution, correct?
Yeah, and you're not bound by what's in this resolution. You're only bound by the concept. Once it's advertised conceptually, then you're free to tinker with the exact language, because you don't have to print. The code says you don't have to have a verbatim rendition of the proposal, only a summary, a descriptive summary. And that's what we're trying to drive at here. So if the core concept is to limit the amendment to the length of service of a concurrent member of the BZA or the BOS on the Planning Commission, then Mr. Fraser's correct that that's all it should say. If you are going to put into play the length of term of service of the members at large from the magisterial districts, then that also needs to be in there. But if that's being taken off the table, then it should be removed from the ad to eschew any confusion on the part of the public.
Yeah.
If you don't intend to take any action.
So that sentence would probably say the said amendments, and then we would strike down to where it gets to increase or decrease. That's where we would start, increase or decrease. Strike it down to where it says length of service of the future members of the Planning Commission who are also concurrent members of the Board or BZA respectively. It doesn't say respectively.
Well, I think the increase or decrease needs to be there because it goes with the 1
Right,
year to
right.
4 years. So as I noted earlier, I think what you need to do is in the 4th line following the word service, strike of the future commissioners appointed by the Board of Supervisors, and the length of service. Finish strike, and therefore it will read through only applying to future members of the Planning Commission who are also concurrent members of the Board of Supervisors and Board of Zoning Appeals. So, and the rest of the resolution is of value to the board because it sets direction from the board as to the following actions the staff must take to.
Yeah, none of that gets published.
Right, it's just boilerplate stuff.
That just gives us our marching orders.
Would you feel comfortable with that here?
So it reads, the said amendments may increase or decrease the length of terms of service of the future members of the Planning Commission who are also concurrent members of the Board of Supervisors and the Board of Zoning Appeals. For any length of time, from 1 year to 4 years, as the case may be, is authorized by Virginia Code, Section 15.2.22.12.
I think this falls under, if you're not completely confused by now, then you don't understand what's going on.
So for the purposes of putting that into amending my motion, it's not simply a function of citing what we just came up with in paragraph 1, is it?
You're just striking your
That's- all right.
partial sentence.
Yeah, I think you can move approval of the resolution with that partial sentence.
Okay, so I'll amend my motion to pass a resolution authorizing the advertisement of a joint public hearing on April 2nd, 2018 with the Planning Commission to amend Rappahannock County Code, Chapter 170-139C, an amendment to Article 16, Boards, Commissions, and Committees. Let's see, 1 and 2. Wherein the membership thereof and the terms of service of the said members of the Planning Commission are set forth. The said amendments may increase or decrease the length of the terms of service of the future members of the Planning Commission, who are also concurrent members of the Board of Supervisors and the Board of Zoning Appeals for any length of time from 1 year to 4 years, as the case may be, as authorized by Virginia Code 15.2-2212.
That's the motion.
That's the motion.
I'll second
Motion made and second. Any more discussion? This is a roll call vote. Mr. Frazier.
it. Aye.
Mr. Lozinski.
Aye.
Ms. Smith. Mr. Perry.
Aye.
And I myself. Next item is almost the same.
And the next item on your agenda is another zoning code amendment related to the condominium conversion conversation that the board had at the last meeting. This relates to County Code Chapter 170-36 and 170-47. 170-36 is the use table for miscellaneous uses where condominium conversion is listed. And then 170-47 is a section where Mr. Goff believes that a new paragraph should be inserted, and with that I'll allow Mr. Goff to provide some input before we continue discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Curry. Our code currently treats a conversion condominium as a use. The Code of Virginia prohibits that. Condominium conversions are not uses like a flea market or a welding shop or a bed and breakfast or an agricultural use. It's a form of ownership. So currently, as it stands, our code purports to regulate something that the Code of Virginia says we can't regulate. I'm referring to the Virginia Code 55-79.43 and 55-79.94, which specifically treat of the subject of conversion condominiums, and where the legislature has chosen to legislate in a specific area within specific parameters, removing from localities the right to regulate that through zoning, then our code must comply with the state law. So the resolution that I have provided to you would make the necessary amendments, which would place the conversion condominium issue in section M of 170-47. I believe Mr. Curry included this resolution in your package, and the language that comprises subsection M, the new subsection, is taken directly from the Code of Virginia.
In an attempt to clarify and not confuse further, Code of Virginia does allow you to consider zoning during condominium conversions if the underlying zoning is not aligned with your code. So if somebody is operating today in fee simple use and they have a grandfathered use or something like that, when they move to condominium conversion, you can at that point then review the use through special exception or permit as your code may deem appropriate. And so inserting this paragraph allows us to do that going forward, but doesn't confuse the citizen to think that they must go through special exception when they're simply changing the ownership of the property.
And right now, Mr. Curry is correct. It also has the added benefit of if by conversion to condominium, there's an increase in demand for service, although that's hard to imagine what that would be in Rappahannock County since we don't have municipal water and sewer generally, except in Sperryville. If there is an additional demand for service, the Code of Virginia does allow you to adjust your fees to offset the public expense that may be incurred as a result of that. But what I do want to stress is that right now, the way our zoning ordinance reads, that conversion to condominium use is going to require special use or special exception as the case may be, and is not permitted at all in certain districts, and that is flatly illegal. That is against the Code of Virginia. So that part of it has to be removed in order to make our code consistent with the current law, state law.
Did we know if at one time we were in compliance, or you don't have a history on it?
I didn't do a legislative history. I know that the Conversion Condominium Act goes back into the 1960s and it's had several iterations and major amendments. And I don't know which one at what point in time resulted. I can tell you that I think that the reason it's in our code is that the old Fairfax code that we cribbed via Fauquier through Mr. McNear probably contained it, and it probably was antiquated then, because condominium act's been around at least since the late 50s, early 60s.
It may have been an attempt to state that we have privilege to use 557943 paragraph E, but it was not in a very clear way. And the way that Mr. Goff has put it forward by adding paragraph M does that in a much more clear way.
A lot of people tend to think of condominiums as they think of Key West, right, Chris? So, but this is not necessarily what's happening. Mr. Sharp has, of course, the Eileen plant, and inside the Eileen plant, you have some artisan shops. The chutney factory, Rick Naraki's welding shop, and I believe there's a cabinet shop, two brothers run a cabinet shop, and it's artisanal, and they want to convert the old Eileen building to condominium. And that's a separate process, and which has its own benefits to the owners thereof. It really doesn't affect us because there's going to be no change in use. Although theoretically could divide it up into 3 juicier tax parcels, so because they own to the center of the interior walls, and therefore would be separate taxable units.
I was wondering about that.
Yep, that's what it means. Separate fee simple interest, all taxable, separate.
Is it then up to the, do they need to form some kind of association, a condo association for maintenance of common area?
They sure do. They have to hire a specialized lawyer who will do the condominium conversion documents. But what this allows for is that the clerk can admit those documents to record without sign off from the zoning administrator. And that's what the Code of Virginia requires. You can't ipso facto, because it's a conversion condominium, then regulate it differently than you would any other form of ownership, lease or fee simple.
This seems pretty straightforward that we need to come into compliance with the Virginia Code. So I'm missing something here.
I don't know, that's the way I'm looking at
all that sounds good to the board, there's a resolution provided that lays that out and then directs staff to take the steps necessary to move towards an April joint public hearing with the Planning Commission.
I guess I'll put that in the form of a motion, Mr. Chairman. This resolution doesn't have any proposed amendments to chapter 170-36 and 170-47.
Well, I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Motion made and seconded, this is another roll call.
I just want to say that I clearly believe we're probably doing something right in spite of ourselves.
Well, the public will have an opportunity to let you know that during the public hearing.
Mr. Frazier,
Aye.
Mr. Lozinski,
Aye.
Ms. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Parrish,
Aye.
and I also. Slowly getting there. Next item is S3. Authorized payment to Fire and Rescue Association.
Yes, sir. I provided for you and in the, on the agenda item for, it's in board docs, a letter provided by the Rappahannock County Volunteer Fire and Rescue Association from Mr. Frank Huff, President, requesting disbursement of some of their funds. I was hopeful that representation would be here to speak to this, so I don't have to interpret their request. I did include in the printed packet I provided for you the letter, a copy of their financial request, a copy of their 501c3 documentation, as well as a copy of the current budget lines available in the Fire Services Fund to which the request applies. With that, Chair, pleases you, perhaps Mr. King-Dankquist or Mr. Comar, or speak.
If I could, as Secretary, I'm going to change my other hat. As Secretary of the Association, just a little history behind this, and I'll make this brief. The association is incorporated through the State Corporation Commission, and up until a few years ago, maintained our own checking account and handled our bills and expenses and so on. On the advice of the previous county attorney, he had suggested that we divest all of the funds in the association and turn it over to the county for submission to the general fund as a separate line item. Because of the fact that even though the association is an incorporated entity, it was not a 501c3. And apparently that had something to do with, and anyone that's more versed in the tax law can attest to what it is. But in any event, the association applied for and received 501c3. And so the request is to transfer whatever funds that the association has earmarked in the general fund and turn them back to the association for two main reasons. One is that any invoices that come into the association for services rendered or purchases of equipment and such is obviously passed through to the Board of Supervisors for review and payment. And as a result, those payments can be anywhere from 30 to 40 days or 45 days in delay. The other thing which goes along with, and a lot of vendors have some issues with waiting that long for payment. The other issue is that a lot of the goods and services that the association would like to obtain for the benefit of the several fire rescue companies, a lot of those are done online now and require a credit card. And of course we know what the situation is as far as county credit cards. So by taking those funds, and we currently have an account and have had an account at Union First Market Bank, and by transferring those funds back into the association, then our treasurer and the president can obtain a credit card so that as we go forward with purchases of goods and services and such, we can take care of those. Plus the fact that when the invoices come into the association, we can pay them within the next several days to a week or so, once approved by the board of directors of the association. So it's just going to streamline the situation, and it's going to make it easier for the association to handle goods and services and such and pass them, make them available to the several fire and rescue companies. It's just going to streamline things more than anything else. And so that was the reason for the request.
Paul Comar, I'm Vice President of the association, and we have found that you get good discounts buying online versus through vendors. The vendors will give us a discount a little bit, but then we have to go through the billing process, which is time consuming and adds labor to the treasurer, is time consuming, and we are finding that if we go online and buy something from eBay or some of these other vendor sites, that we're able to shave costs off of those products. Right now, we can't do that. The only way we can do it is the individual company will agree that they're going to buy it on their debit card and then get reimbursed from the association once they submit the bill. Again, convoluted. Company has to submit a bill to the association treasurer. She submits a bill through county administration and the treasurer, and eventually gets a check. We would like to do all of that in the future. In other words, we'll pay all of our bills. And we're looking towards this step here is going to get us over a hump until we get into a new budget year where we'd like to just roll all of that money in quarterly payments back to the association, and we'll pay all the bills. And we're still accountable for those bills, everything would have to go through fire levy. Whether it was an insurance payment or whatever, the association would be part of a bill submission process, just like the 7 companies are. So it would make sense, and it would take a burden off of a whole bunch more checks that you all have to write.
I'm proposing that we displace a county employee by making less work for the employees.
I don't think that would happen. I think there's plenty of work with the current budget that you have.
Wishful thinking.
When the dust settles, we would just be returning to the way that the association used to do business.
I don't remember there being any problems the way it was done. I think it was only the question of whether or not the county could put money in that account if it wasn't a 501c3. And I don't know to what extent it was explored. It was just
That's the advice of the county attorney.
Right, I think it was precautionary.
So how would this work? I'm looking here at these line items that kind of fall under the association add up in FY18 to $284,700. And now we're talking about, I mean, three quarters of the year is going by, or 8/12, whatever that is, 3/4. So are you asking for a prorated amount, or is this for the next budget year?
I understand that they're asking for the funds remaining in those lines that are listed. And so I can't confirm for you tonight that these are the numbers. So if you were to take an action, I would suggest you take an action to pay out the remaining balances in these lines, which will be approximately $30,187.98. But it could be a little bit off.
And I agree with that because the numbers were based on when the letter was drafted and the report from Debbie Nick that filled up the void. So some of those items have had some deductions, including this month. So you would want to narrow it down to the account balances at the time.
The large number that's absent from this is the insurance, and I imagine that's already been paid for the year.
I think there was one more payment left on that.
So the association is basically saying this year, we'll let the county keep working with the insurance and paying that. Next year, as we start anew, they would want to control the entirety of those lines, including the insurance, which, as we had talked about in previous meetings, is an independent policy that they hold. So it would be appropriate for them to do that and share the budget information as your agreement requires them to substantiate why the numbers are what they're asking for.
That's correct.
Mr. Kirk, could I ask a question? Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Mr. Kirk, is it akin to just going to be a quarterly appropriation by the board as if they were a department?
I think in the current request, it would be liquidated funds as available today. In the future, they want to be handled like the companies are handled as recognized by the agreement.
Okay.
Yes,
So,
quarterly.
And a lot of those funds would come into the association, and then the association would cut the checks and send them out directly to the companies.
And the association treasurer, in conjunction with Debbie Nick, will be working together to come up with a projected expenses quarterly to make sure that we're not impacting the county's coffers of monies. We'll take a look at what they're going to be.
Surprise, here we are.
Yeah, and do you take the one insurance premium that's this big and cut it into semi-annual or quarterly payments with the insurance agent? And I think that's
So just to be clear, FY19 actions are contemplated by the agreement and are not impacted by a decision made tonight. Today's decision is simply whether the board wants to write a check to the association for the amount of value that is of funds that are remaining in these accounts: training, special equipment, apparatus repair, data processing, supplies, office equipment, other expenses, and RAP EMS council, which at the time of the letter when it was written was $30,187.98. It's very likely just a little bit less than that now.
Is everybody okay with that?
Some of it causes noises and interference.
We're moving the microphones closer to us to satisfy Mr. Irwin as a side effect.
That was paper extra.
Legal slides.
Again, I'm okay with it. I think it was just a former county attorney. I thought it was I guess a precautionary measure that since they were not a 501c3, that maybe we should not have been just handing them a certain amount of money that was earmarked. It's not that the money has never been earmarked, that they have specific things that they need to spend it on. So I think we're just going back to something that already proved it is beneficial.
You want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion. I'll put this in the form of a motion.
I'll second it.
So I understand the motion to be to pay to the association the remaining balance of training, specialty equipment, apparatus repair, data processing, office supplies, office equipment, other expenses, and RAP EMS council.
According to the fund balance of those lines. Yeah.
I'll second it, yeah.
Can't hurt.
We're going to make this a roll call vote. All those in favor say aye. Mr. Parrish?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Lozinski?
Aye.
Mr. Frazier?
Aye.
And I also. Well, we're down to S4. And this is the DOT application.
Now, Mr. Chairman, there was a BZA meeting. I didn't attend it the other night, but I've heard from a couple of people what went down. I thought perhaps we should discuss it. I think the BZA may have made a mistake. And the fact that I believe perhaps Mr. Curry could give us his idea of whatever happened, but I don't think that the BZA was correct in its decision not to uphold the zoning administrator because there's basically no evidence presented to overturn her decision. So I think in the process that this board wants to enforce its zoning ordinance and also to support its employees, especially when they make the right decision, or may have made the right decision, I think that it's incumbent upon this board to at least discuss this and look at it and see if we want to appeal the BZA decision to the circuit court.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I was in attendance at that meeting. I don't think Mr. Curry, he can certainly opine, but I was in attendance at that meeting. It was a 4-to-1 vote by the BZA, so it was a clear majority. And Dodds were not in attendance, the applicant was not in attendance, but their attorney was. And their attorney presented evidence, they presented their case. So I don't know why we wouldn't think that certain arguments or evidence weren't presented there to be discussed, because their counsel was there and made an argument on their behalf.
I don't think our counsel was there, county attorney.
Our counsel was not there.
I'm just trying to figure out what may or may not have happened, and I don't believe, from what I've heard, that there was any evidence presented that would overturn the Summers decision. Do you know what the evidence was?
Well, I'm not going to do it justice because I'm going to go on recollection here, but there was an opinion given to the applicant by a previous zoning administrator in which they acted in a certain manner based on that decision. And then there was a question that arose as to whether or not the matter of a tourist home would be something that was less than 30 days or more than 30 days. That was the zoning administrator's finding, that 30 days didn't necessarily, if you were 30 days or more, then you weren't necessarily a tourist home. That was appealed, and
if I could,
confusing this. We have.
I hate to put this on the spot, but would the board let me ask a question? I don't think that the actual email that was in question from the former, or at least a former zoning administrator, was actually about a tourist home, was it? It was about the tourist home?
Yes, sir.
And it was about the length of time, or was it about the, whether they needed to have a permit to charge as a tourist home?
The length of time.
It was about the length of time.
It's about the 30 days.
And I mean, I don't understand exactly what happened. It was your opinion, or it was the former zoning administrator's opinion that was actually in question?
I did a letter of determination that the time frame did not matter, that they were a tourist home, and that's the decision that they appealed.
Mr. Frazier, I was there, and I can add some context. The letter, an email provided by Ms. Kaiser some time ago made reference to 2-year code sections having to do with taxation. Did not reference anything in 170, which is zoning.
That's what I'm trying to get at. The actual, what they were going on as supporting their claim had nothing to do with this.
So there's a part of State Code 2311C, I believe, 15-2311C, would generally have a zoning administrator's determination stand and not be overturned by a subsequent. But there's question of whether an email from a former zoning administrator referencing 2 taxation code sections would be interpreted as a zoning determination, particularly if it didn't reference the recipient's rights to appeal within 30 days, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one half of the discussion, whether that 2311 section applies. The other part is regarding the presumption of I don't know what the right word is, of correctness of the zoning administrator's determination. And generally, it's correct unless there's, overwhelming evidence that suggests that it's not. And there may or may not have been that information. I have a personal opinion on all that. But it would be my recommendation, the best way forward would be for the board to make sure that the ordinance says precisely what the board thinks it should say relative to 30 days, 100 days, 5 days for a tourist home, and don't allow a determination like this to be questioned or appealed in the future, make it ironclad. Rather than going through the expense of an appeal or to the circuit court, fix the ordinance to make sure it's very clear what we want as a community.
I think that's a very good approach to have, but I still think that from what I'm hearing, that the BZA erred completely on this.
Well, they're an independent body, and of course, they're allowed to take votes however they want.
Right, and this board is allowed to support its employees and its agents and its zoning ordinance.
This board just gave them a tremendous vote of confidence with their 150 years of collective experience, they pointed out. And
everybody makes mistakes.
Right. And so honestly, I'm not comfortable with scrutinizing, their decisions. I think we owe them the respect as a board to let them make the decisions which they were appointed to do. I think it's pretty thin ice, pretty shaky territory to start scrutinizing their decisions.
They do it all over the state.
With the weather impacts this weekend, I haven't had a chance to review the video from that meeting. Is there any chance we could discuss this next meeting after? Has everyone seen the video or attended the meeting?
I have not, no.
If there's a 30-day appeal period, you miss it, it's jurisdiction.
Yeah, that's the problem.
I did review the materials before the meeting, but I did not attend the meeting. And I did see that it referenced taxation rather than actual zoning. I guess my question is, if we change the ordinance at this point, does that correct the current situation?
No.
No. So that applies to one citizen right now. So if you were to change the ordinance, it would apply to everybody who applies for the tourist home from here on out. Well, from whenever you adopt it, when you adopt it. And I believe the BZA, I'm not sure, the action they took was to not affirm the zoning administrator's determination. It was like it never happened.
The current zoning administrator's determination.
And there is no previous zoning, in my opinion, there is no previous determination. Given the word.
It looks like this board is not going to authorize the county attorney to challenge this in court. So the next best thing is that we need to get on track to get the language fixed that we need. So is it?
So the May amendments, as they've been termed, that are in the table, Michelle's been working on turning those into strike-through and has set up a meeting with Mr. Goff, or is attempting to sit down and work through those so that they can be rendered for consideration by the Planning Commission of whether they do a public hearing with.
That was already done. I don't understand why that's being done again.
For all of the table, if it's been done, just point me to the meeting, because I wasn't able to.
Yeah, I was part of the, we did most of that when I was on the Planning Commission.
I know the table, but all the strike-through wording?
What we're talking about, Mr. Frazier, is the planning commission's never had a public hearing on
I understand that. They authorized somebody to advertise it, but nobody ever did.
Well, we just got clear authorization, I guess it was the last planning commission meeting, and they gave Michelle that task And Michelle and I have now looked at the chart, and we have to, because they directed us to do a strike through and create draft advertisements for this. It's rather extensive because it touches on multiple areas of the zoning ordinance to include the definition of tourist home. Am I correct? So what's going to happen is by the next planning council meeting, we'll have a draft resolution ready for them. They're not talking about a public hearing their next meeting. They're talking about we have to have the resolution done by the next meeting.
Right.
So before summer, they will be in a position to advertise for a public hearing, which they can conduct and then recommend these changes to this board, which is the ordinary course of procedure.
And I do think it's
Right, but it
important,
got hijacked last September.
it's important for us to make sure that whatever is advertised for public hearing goes in the paper, it's very clear what that is, and that the planning commission reads it and say, yes, that's what I want to go in the paper. So that's the process that's happening now with all due speed.
I thought that process had already done because September is when they authorized Mr. Dameron. They thought they did, but he didn't do it. They authorized it to go to public hearing.
And I can only speak about, I'm looking forward and we're gonna make progress going forward. I can't go back in time.
We got clear marching orders. I don't know what happened in September, but we got clear marching orders now from the planning commission to prepare the advertisements. And it's rather involved. So rather than waste a lot of time, it's best if we let the planning commission have their separate public hearing instead of trying to rush to accommodate, I don't know what.
No, I'm not recommending that. I just want to make sure that we just get on the ball and get this thing done.
We're moving
because
forward.
This is just.
It's going forward. Michelle and I just set up a meeting to actually go through this within the time constraints that we both have. Because it's going to take, just our initial meeting is going to be 2 to 3 hours because of the extensiveness of what's happened. See, this was years in the making. Years in the making.
More than
And then all of a sudden they dump it on staff and say, get it done tomorrow. Well, it doesn't work that way. We've got to carefully think it through and make sure that the advertisements are correctly worded to bracket what they actually intend to do. Because remember what happened in 2010?
Right.
Okay, they're going to amalgamate parcels to accommodate the minimum acreage requirement for tourist homes, and then what pops out the other end of the sausage making machine is 2 and 5 acres. So, and that wasn't reflected in the advertisement, therefore the void ab initio, waste of everybody's time and money. So it's important that we allow it to take its natural course and go through the planning commission as regularly prescribed by state code.
The most important thing here is that the topic of tourist home, the definition of tourist home apparently is included in this main amendment chart and will be included in the strike-through document presented to the planning commission for public hearing. So that's the logical conclusion to this appeal, so that the board knows when you pass an ordinance that if somebody asks you what a tourist home is, it's very clear. It's those words in the document.
All righty. Thank you, gentlemen.
Next item.
Those for adjournment.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Motion made and
I'm ready first, so we can do it by acclamation if we want.
nobody. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Even the audience is saying aye.
This is early for the audience.
Okay.